across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, good evening and welcome to the Evening Exchange with me, Charlie Rowley, in for Peter Cardwell. And what a show we've got for you tonight. The Keir Starmer Premiership teeters on the brink, with cabinet ministers turning their backs against the Prime Minister and a certain Lord Hermer, you might have heard of him before, the Attorney General, back in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. So how much longer can the PM survive? Also tonight, the 3 asylum seekers have been found guilty of a vile rape against a vulnerable stranger. That's in Brighton. I know lots of calls came in on Kevin's show just a second ago. We'll hear all about that as we progress. All the while, migrants have been exposed for setting up fake marriages. Yes, you heard it first. Fake marriages on social media to dodge deportation. Meanwhile, in Epsom, the accusation of rape against a woman of leaving a nightclub accused asylum seekers again of a rape there. That has now been dropped by the police. We'll get you the latest line as we get it. That's breaking news this evening. And will our new 662 million small boats deal with the French make any difference whatsoever? I suggest that it won't. Let me know what you think. And a happy St George's Day, my lovely British patriots. Reform UK have announced today plans to rip up the curriculum, and they've included in some of those plans to make sure that there is the Union flag flying at every school. I think that's a brilliant idea, but we'll be debating that policy later on with a Bradford secondary school teacher. Tons more news and plenty of passionate debate coming your way with me in the next 3 hours. I'm Charlie Rowley. Welcome to Talk Tonight. This is the Evening Exchange. Well, there we are, me lovely people. Hello and welcome. It is the 23rd of April. It is St George's Day. Happy St George's Day. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know what makes you proud to be British, actually, to be English. What does that mean to you? Is it English tea? Is it strawberries and cream at the Wimbledon? A bit of warm beer at cricket? Let me know. I want to hear your thoughts about that and all of the stories that we're covering tonight, including the peril of the Prime Minister's premiership. 0344 499 1000. That's 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk to 87222, or if you're following us on X, you can just send the word talkTV on X and send us a message. And again, send us a voice note, or 0344 499 1000. We'll get straight to it. I've got my first guest of one of many this evening, and a man who knows what's going on. He's got his finger on the pulse in Westminster. It is Matt Vickers. Matt Vickers joins me now. He is the Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party and a former Shadow Police Minister. Matt, can you hear me?
Good afternoon, good evening, Charlie, even. I've been out on the stump all day. We're out on the election campaign trail, big important local elections ahead. So we've been out, well, we've been down south, which is unusual for me. Weather's gorgeous. I didn't realise. I've been to Eastbourne this morning. I've celebrated St George's Day with an ice cream on the beach in Eastbourne. I'm full of it. I'm loving it. The sun's shining. Been knocking on doors all day. We've now found our way to the pub. Good times to be had. Lots of work to do. Big, important decisions for the people across the country in these local elections.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for that, Matt. We didn't ask for any of that information, but you gave it to us anyway, and we're very grateful that you did. And it looks very sunny where you are. If you're watching us on talkTV, it's a beautiful backdrop there with those lovely trees, spring awakening. Now, Matt, tell us, you've been in the Commons today over the last few weeks. What do you make of it? Where does the Prime Minister go from here? He's had 2 very senior cabinet permanent secretaries, some of the most senior people in Whitehall. They have given evidence to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, challenging some of the things that the Prime Minister has been saying. But yet the Prime Minister seems to be suggesting that actually the accusations that you and the Conservative Party were labelling against him have not been found to be correct. But just as you see it from the view from Westminster, what hangs in the balance for the Prime Minister?
I think there's 2 huge issues going on here. The first is the actual problem that he's got. He came into office telling us he was going to be whiter than white. He said that Partygate was terrible. It was disgusting. It let down the public. It did. You know, there's lots of questions around that. But he was going to fix it. He was going to sort it. We've now got the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom who appointed a man to the most important, prestigious diplomatic post that we have. The guy who'd been sacked from office twice. He knew he was a wrong one. We all knew he was a wrong one. Nobody at home is shocked to find that Peter Mandelson is a rotter who can't be trusted. That's why he was sacked from government twice. It then turns out that Peter Mandelson was linked to the most vile, evil paedophile ever to walk the streets. It was no shock. But then at the dispatch box, Kemi chewed his ear. We got the confession from Starmer that he knew that Mandelson was big chums with Epstein, even after he'd been charged, even after he'd been sent to prison. They were still best of mates. And then what's unfolded since, the detail that's unfolded since, has just been devastating. He told us that he'd gone through all due processes. We then find out that UK Security and Vetting had raised alarms, raised concerns about this situation, and the government went ahead with it anyway. We've now seen a police investigation. He's in this up to his ears, but it's not a one-off. It's not a one-off, because we've got the story about Matthew Doyle, a man appointed to the House of Lords by Starmer, chum of Starmer's who'd worked in Number 10, appointed to the House of Lords, only to find that actually he'd been associated with a paedophile as well. And that was known. Absolutely devastating for anybody in the country in terms of their view of public office, their view of politics, and their view of that Prime Minister. And now it's all unravelling. Labour MPs are calling him out for what they've seen.
Well, let's deal with both of those things, because if you're the Prime Minister, do you not want to cut him a bit of slack? Do you not want, as the Prime Minister, to know that when someone is going through the highest level of security clearance in government, you want to know, actually, if the recommendation that was made to the Foreign Office, the recommendation by UKSV that they pass on to the Foreign Office, it's the Foreign Office that make the ultimate decision. But if UKSV are recommending that actually this guy should not have that level of clearance, you as the Prime Minister would want to know that, wouldn't you?
Well, you can talk about the details, you can talk about what came out. At the end of the day, this Prime Minister made a decision to appoint this person, this creature who'd been sacked from government twice, who he knew was associated with this paedophile, to office. He gave him access, apparently, before clearance had even been questioned. He gave him access to confidential information. We now know there's a police investigation going on about the way Mandelson handles such information previously. It's an absolute disaster. We can concentrate on the ins and outs of who knew what and when. He knew Mandelson had this link to a paedophile. The process was there. The UK Security and Vetting flagged their concerns that don't even relate to the Epstein stuff, and still he went ahead with it. It's a disaster for the government. It shows us exactly what Keir Starmer is. He's a man with zero judgment, with zero backbone, who couldn't organise a pee up in a brewery. But the big problem isn't just that. It isn't just the lack of judgment on this. It's the fact that this is a zombie government now. It's paralysed by this. Today, people in the streets are worried about paying their bills. They're worried about our national security and what it means for defence. Parliament should be talking about those things. The Prime Minister this morning should have woke up and worried about the fact that families out there are struggling to make ends meet, the fact that businesses are going to the wall at the fastest rate since the world economic crash, the fact that 20% virtually more people are unemployed. He should be worrying about that today. He's not worrying about that. He's worrying about keeping the keys to Number 10. It is an utter disaster. On Monday, Wes Streeting was supposed to have a meeting about my local hospital. Instead, he cancelled that because he was going in to back Starmer up in the chamber. This government has lost its way. It's now embroiled in scandal it's up to its neck in scandals. We've got the homeless minister who made her tenants homeless. We've got the anti-corruption minister. It's just a disaster, one thing after the other. This is the low of the low.
I'm sorry to hear that Wes wasn't able to come to your hospital.
Disastrous.
Disastrous. I'm sure he's listening. I'm sure he's listening, and I'm sure right now he'll be writing to you to say that he'll be making a new appointment to come and see you. But he might have been part of the cabinet group of people, the cabinet quad, you could call them, of Rachel Reeves, David Lammy, and Shabana Mahmood, who has apparently, as we learned from the Telegraph, told the Prime Minister that actually, things are getting really difficult. You've got to change course. So when you now see people not fulfilling their responsibilities, like Wes in your case, not doing their job as a cabinet minister, focusing on the internal politics, there's got to be a question as to whether he will soon be out of a job, like Morgan McSweeney, who he sacked, as you recall, who is giving evidence to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee on Tuesday, which is just allowing this story to run and run and run. Where does it end? And what is your view of anyone actually who could take over? I'd like to hear.
Well, every time someone's questioned, more dirt comes out. We saw Ollie Robbins there, interviewed, questioned at length, and we found out that actually, it turns out they're trying to get Matthew Doyle a senior ambassadorial position.
But is that not when you move on from a job? Is it not the right thing to do at the time? Do you not try and help someone out and say, look, I've had a very senior director of communications in my team. He's very, very good. Without knowing his who his friendship base is, do you not have a quick word with people and say, come on, sort him out, give him a job? No?
This is the Dame Margaret Hodge line of helping mates
Yes,
get jobs.
This
is not a job. We're not getting them a job in the office. We're not, is there a cleaning gig going on? Do we need a clerk in so-and-so? This is an ambassadorial position representing this country abroad. It should be the most experienced, capable people. And he's decided, give him a job. We don't want him at number 10. He's not quite up to the job. But could you give him a role there? And the biggest and most important part of that discussion not only is the fact that this was this rotten appointment process. Secretary, don't tell the Foreign Secretary I want a gig in his department for me, mate. It absolutely reeks. And the more these people are questioned, the more that comes out. We're going to hear from McSweeney. But actually, the other interesting story is the fact that the Prime Minister is proroguing Parliament in order to avoid having Prime Minister's questions on Wednesday coming. It's a disaster.
Well, you don't need to ask the Prime Minister any questions, do you, when they've had such a successful day, announcing a new deal with France, 662 million of UK taxpayers' money going to France to patrol borders, to fund their policing, to fund their drones, to fund more intelligence so they can start stopping more than just a third of what they currently do of those small boat crossings. That's a huge success, isn't it, for the government, Matt? You're a former, shadow policing minister. You should be welcoming that, shouldn't you, from the Home Office? This
government's objectives seem to be to pee money up the wall at the taxpayers' expense and tax us all to death for it. Hence, us seeing all these businesses going to the wall. Hence, people paying unprecedented levels of tax, and that money is either all being spent on a ballooning welfare system, or it's being thrown on projects like this, pet projects. The reality is, we all know that whatever we're paying France for isn't exactly working. It's not delivering the results.
People would say that £700 million that the Tories spent on the Rwanda scheme where no flights took off the ground. They'd say that was a pet project, wouldn't they?
As this channel well knows, I'm not averse to calling out the mistakes that the last government made. In fact, they made lots of mistakes on this, but they were moving in the right direction. And actually, all of the rest of the debate, all of the discussions, all of the schemes and the thises and that's and the ifs and the buts that the government keep announcing, it's all immaterial. It's window dressing. The only way that we solve this small boats crisis is to start returning people who arrive in the country illegally. If you break into this country, you should be detained and deported, removed, no ifs, no buts. Once we start doing that, people will stop arriving. And however wrong the last government got it, in the same period under this government, the number of people arriving has gone up. It hasn't gone up a little bit. It's gone up 45%. 45% more people breaking into the country illegally, more people in hotels. Only 6% of the 70 plus. The number of people being removed is unbelievably low. It's pathetic. It's appalling. The only way this will get fixed is if people come together and decide, the government acts to prevent people who break in the country being able to stay. It's not rocket science. We know it works. We did it with Albania. Albania, one of the top places from which people were breaking into this country. We got a deal with Albania that meant we were returning them. The Conservatives got that deal. The number of people arriving, once they knew they were going home, fell by 96%. People who break in should not be allowed to stay. That's the only way we fix this problem.
Well, I think a lot of people will agree with that. I'm sure the phones are going to light up on the back of that conversation. But you talked about people breaking into the country. It's not just breaking into the country. It's when they go on to break the laws of this country in a very, very damning, malicious, monstrous way. And I just want to get your views on the Brighton case that we've heard today. 3 migrants now convicted, I understand, of a rape in Brighton. You know, your views on that. As I say, as a former shadow Home Office minister, policing minister, you know, we've got police obviously being asked to be pulled away on these kinds of cases against people that have come into the country illegally, rather than focusing on actually the crimes that need to be solved by people that are already here. I mean, your view on that?
I'm not a former. I haven't been sacked yet, Charlie. I'm still there. But in real terms, actually, if you allow people to break in the country illegally, you have no control over who is coming here. That is the first fault in the problem. If you've got people coming in and you don't know who they are, what they're about, and they haven't applied in any sensible process, then you are obviously ending up with some of the wrong people. But beyond that, when you look at some of these people who come into the country, they disproportionately break the law. They are disproportionate criminality. When you look at some of the nationalities of people who are here, people scream at me that I'm a racist for saying such things, but the stats talk for themselves. The facts talk for themselves. If you come to this country illegally, you shouldn't be allowed to stay. If you come to this country and you commit a crime, you should equally not be allowed to stay. You should be removed. We need to be robust in this. We've seen all the problems that the ECHR poses. That's why Kemi's been very forward, very direct. She hasn't just tweeted about it or issued a press statement. She's done the homework. She's got some of the biggest legal minds in the country together to come up with a plan to leave the ECHR so that we can protect our borders, so that we can remove some of these vile characters who commit crimes on our turf, so that we can protect our veterans. There's all sorts of things spell out. I mean, chicken nugget gate is the most whimsical thing that ever happened in this country. Somebody not removed from a criminal, not removed from the country because their kids don't like foreign chicken nugget. What an appalling situation. Rules in this country, laws in this country need to be made by people elected by the people of this country, not by some foreign court interpreting willy-nilly. Disastrous.
I think a lot of people would agree with you on that. But what is not funny is obviously when it appears that somebody accuses migrants or asylum seekers of committing a vile crime that doesn't take place, whether they're confused or in any way. When that gets media pickup, then it becomes slightly problematic when we have this conversation. I'm referring to the incident in Epsom. And I'll get your views on it if I can, but I'm just going to read out first, if I may, the update that we've had. This is breaking news on that Epsom case. I understand this is from Surrey Police, I understand. So this is an update in relation to a report of a rape in Epsom, which we received in the early hours on Saturday, the 11th of April. A thorough investigation, including an extensive examination of CCTV footage of the woman's movements, house-to-house inquiries, interviewing witnesses and forensic tests has been carried out. Through this examination of all evidence, we can conclude that no sexual offence occurred on this occasion, and we are closing the investigation. What has become clear is that a woman in her 20s, during a night out in Epsom, sustained an accidental head injury prior to making a confused report. The woman involved has given us permission to share this information with you, and she continues to be supported by the relevant services. Now, this was a story that obviously the police have dealt with very, very carefully. And obviously the woman in relation to the police have been allowed to bring that information to light. But that did get some coverage, didn't it? It got a lot of pickup. And
it tells you something. I mean, there's two challenges, isn't there? One of those challenges is that we need to ensure that when these things come out, social media has meant that things move lightning speed and are spread here, there, and everywhere, and everyone offers their opinion on them before we know the details. And when that's misplaced, that has real consequences for people who are tarred with the wrong brush, who get all sorts of false claims against them. It's also not good for the victim in this situation, or the perceived victim, who's then amplified. Their message is amplified, and they've got to pick up the pieces the next day. To that extent, we've got to be very careful until the facts of these cases are known. We've got to trust the police to go in there and do their bit. But we've also got, as has been said previously, actually, the police and the authorities need to be upfront with the public about who commits crimes who they are and not be overly sensitive about sharing that, because that also causes friction. But all too often now the public will assume that if the police aren't releasing details of something, it's because it relates to somebody's migration status, etc. So we do have to be careful about what goes on social media. We do have to have responsible broadcasters and news outlets who check the detail before publishing such stuff. And we have to give the police a bit of trust in these circumstances.
Matt, you are the voice of reason, and that is why you are still the Shadow Home Office Minister. I demoted you, didn't I, a second ago? I apologise profusely for that. Profusely. I hope you can forgive me.
You might have got the memo. You might have got the memo from Kevin before me. I don't know.
I'm sorry. Breaking news line here, I'm afraid. But good job you're outside in the sun. Happy St George's Day. Just very quickly, what makes you English? Why do you celebrate St George's Day? We've got a couple of clips, I think, to play if you want to listen to them from the Prime Minister, who was celebrating earlier on St George's Day. Let's just have a listen to that if we can, and get your reaction to the Prime Minister being quite upbeat about St George's Day today.
We will fly our flag proudly. It's our flag. It belongs to us, and we will fly it for the values that we believe in, and they're the values of the people I've named in this room tonight, the people who step out for their communities, who want to bring people together, who reject the division that others want to inflict on us. They are English values: service, generosity and respect. And that's why I love this country so much, because that is us. That is our values. That is what we fight for. That is what the flag truly represents. And when we stand together, united in our communities, we are stronger than any challenge that is thrown at us.
Well, I think we can all get behind that. Nothing wrong there, nothing to see here. But could the Prime Minister hold it back just for one day, when we're all having a good old knees up celebrating all the great things about being English, without trying to insinuate or use this day or our great English flag as a divisive tool to end on a bum note? Listen to what he had to say at the end of that speech.
And when time and time again, when times get tough, we pull each other together and we pull each other up. And it's really important that we do that, because there's no getting round the fact that there are voices both here and abroad who would seek to divide us, who want to set us apart from each other, who want to pretend that in this country what we really do is to distinguish between people, to find the points of difference, to have the sort of toxic culture of hatred between different individuals, different groups, different communities.
Oh, well, we didn't need to hear that, did we? It was all going so well. So, Matt, just finally, you're outside still in the beautiful English countryside by the looks of things. That's a thing of beauty. That's what being English is all about. Give us your take. Leave my listeners on the back of this interview and on the back of this conversation with something uplifting about what you think it is to be English and why we should be celebrating St George's Day.
So I think it's everything, isn't it? It's we should be proud of this incredible history of this great country that all too often gets glossed up. Well, it gets questioned in every which way possible. We should be very proud of it. We should be united behind it. We shouldn't be ashamed of our flag. We might be ashamed of our Prime Minister at the moment. We shouldn't be ashamed of our flag, of our great country. I'm going to get out there. So we've been knocking doors all day. I'm now going to go out and celebrate in a great English pub in Farnborough. Farnborough. I'm at the thatched cottage. Proper English pub. English countryside, beautiful part of the world. I'm going to get in there and talk to some English people about what they're proud of and what they're up to and why they're so happy to be celebrating St George's Day. I think there is still a big debate to be had about whether this should be a bank holiday. It's a cracking day to have. We should make more of it.
Matt, that sounds like a debate in Parliament to come. Thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure to speak to you. Get back out there. Enjoy that nice warm beer. Matt Vickers, thank you so much again. Up next, we've got the debate desk with James Hodgkinson from the Adam Smith Institute and a good friend of mine, political commentator Matthew Torpid. All next. You don't want to miss it. Stay tuned to talk.
handover briefing I was getting as I arrived at post was what I felt was a generally dismissive attitude to his vetting clearance. The focus was on getting Mandelson out to Washington quickly. Despite this atmosphere, an atmosphere of pressure, the department completed developed vetting to the normal high standard. Because the vetting process is not there to determine fitness for office or reputational risk, it's there to protect national security.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back to the Evening Exchange with me, Charlie Rowley, in for Peter Cardwell. Well, what a great interview we've just had with Matt Vickers, the current Shadow Home Affairs Minister. What a great guy that was, giving up all his time. Drop us a call. What did you make of that conversation? 0344 499 1000. That's 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk to 87222 or send us a message on X at talkTV. Voice notes, calls, text, they all matter. And if I can read them out, if you've not had one of the too many warm beers celebrating St George's Day, we will read them out. But I'm now delighted to be joined as part of the debate desk by two great individuals who have always got something to say for themselves. I'm absolutely sure of it, and they certainly will today. It is Matthew Torpett, political commentator. Delighted to see you. How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm very well, not too bad. Bearing up.
Good.
And James Hodgkinson, we met last week, and even the week before, I think, as well. So you're a regular on this show. Nice to see you both.
Lovely to be here.
Great to see you. Now let's get stuck in. The first debate that we're having tonight is about the latest announcement by the Home Secretary, this deal with France, paying £662 million of UK taxpayer money to the French on the top of the millions of pounds that we have already sent to them. Matt, I'll start with you first, if I may, as a Labour supporter, Labour advisor. Give or take, but you can tell us. What do you make of it all? Is this a good move by the government, or is this just getting into the weeds again of an issue that just won't have any impact at all?
Without sounding like a Labour frontbencher, it will remain to be seen, I suppose. I think we should welcome that there are some conditions on it. I think 160 million is conditional on some level of results from the French, because I suppose you sort of look at it logically, the French won't want to keep half the people that are coming across. Of course, they're going to almost want to will them on and go, it's not our issue anymore. We heard stories last week about people now making the trek across from Belgium and cutting out, and the Belgians sort of taking them to the French part of the water, the French then going, we'll take them to the middle, and now you can go on to England. So the fact that it's conditional is useful. We should welcome that. We've not had it before. I am still a believer you're not going to change any of this whilst we have quite vague immigration laws, very poorly drafted immigration laws, and unless you leave or aim to do something with the 48 Convention, you're constantly going to have people claiming to be asylum seekers when they're not.
James, you're from the Anna Smith Institute. You know how to make sure that every penny of taxpayers' money is spent properly. Is this value for money on the back of everything that's already been sent to France to try and stop the boats that, as Matthew was saying, they're now just moving a bit further down to Belgium? You know, that's where the boats are going to set off from. So why on earth are we still engaging with France?
Well, the devil is in the detail with this deal. £662 million is an awful lot of money, that goes without saying. And we know that it will pay for at least 50 additional officers, 1 new vessel and 20 maritime officers. So we are talking about tangible results here, which I suppose is a positive step, but I remain sceptical. You spoke about the conditional nature of the funding. The first roughly 500 million seems to come without some of those conditions, and it's the latter 160 million that does come with the conditions. And so obviously we're giving the bulk of the money in advance. So is there the incentive necessary for the French to really, really go hard on this? And I think we also need to be cautious, because in part what this deal does is it replaces a 2023 border policing deal that was due to expire at the end of the month. So Is it necessary to keep doing what we're doing? I think on the whole, yes. Will it revolutionise how we're able to police and protect the border? I don't think so.
I mean, a lot of people will say that the £700 million that was spent on Rwanda, the Rwanda scheme under the last government, was a total waste of money because not a single plane took off the ground. But, we'd never know whether that would have been a deterrent or not. Is this not just a positive move, I would argue, by the government to actually, say, look, we're only going to give France that extra £160 million if we start to see results? Or by that point, do you think, well, they've got 500 million out of us already, jobs are good?
Well, as I've said, making it conditional is useful, but the devil is in the detail with that. What we need to remember is that not all of these agreements work. Much was made of the one-in, one-out deal, and as of February, and they are the latest figures because I did check earlier today, 305 were returned to France and 367 have arrived in the UK. So it does remain to be seen whether this will have much of an impact. But what is important to say is we do need to look at reforming the incentive structure. These migrants are rational actors, and I was looking into the academic literature around this earlier, and historic acceptance rates on asylum claims are higher in the UK than our comparator European nations. So if the government wants to take a stand on this, to do things differently, they've got to be really clear with their messaging, because at the moment we're seeing migrants preferring to come here over other safe countries like France. Obviously that policing deal with France is useful, but if we can get through to those migrants that it would be best for them to stay in a safe country, not take the risk of crossing the channel, then that is the optimal scenario.
Matthew, this is a cabinet minister, the Home Secretary, that seems to actually be doing something. When the government seems to be consumed all by the Peter Mandelson scandal, it would be good news, I imagine, for the Labour government, for Labour backbenchers to say, hooray, we've actually got something to tell our constituents about over the next couple of weeks. If, Labour backbenchers agree that actually she's going down the right path. I mean, how do you see not just this announcement by the Home Secretary, but the state of play as it is with Labour at the minute? The government is just not able to get a break because of the headlines day after day about Peter Mandelson.
Yeah, and I think it feels like a perma-crisis that's continued really since COVID, and it felt certainly like managed decline when Rishi Sunak was in. If you'd have been in a coma for the last 2 years, I don't think you'd know there had been an election. It feels very much where we were anyway. I think Shabana may be looking more long-term as well. We read that she's got leadership ambitions, even with the most devastating MRP poll, she's still set to hold her seat. And if you've only got 100 and odd Labour MPs left and you only need 20 of them to get on the ballot, she may say, look, I told you all this was going to come. We now have a reform Tory coalition. This is because nobody dealt with immigration. I clearly had it right and therefore I should be leader. I still remain of the opinion there's certain incentives people will come for, the fact that we put people up. There is others that people on the left would say, well, actually, it's because most of the world speaks English, they'll have family here. I think it's because there's organised crime networks here in our high streets, in vape shops, in Turkish barber shops, all the rest of it, and that's why people come. But I think if you had some element of deportation hubs or somewhere where people could go, if you were aware that you could go to your local embassy or to a pinch point, whether that if you're leaving Syria, it's in Turkey, you're not having to make the crossing. You can make the argument if you're coming across the channel at that point, you must not be legitimate because you had all the opportunity to hand in your ID. We know who you are. You're not throwing it in the channel pretending to be from somewhere else. And until that's changed, which again comes back to the convention, it says anyone with fear of persecution, which is probably 3/4 of the world for any political or social reason whatsoever, you're allowed to come here by irregular means, which is what people do. So that's where the change needs to be made, I think. And this will make maybe minor differences, I would say.
But you'll have people now coming from Belgium. But the point is that people are coming from France in the first place, which is a safe country. So why are people coming to the UK in the first place? That's what many people will ask.
Yeah, again, I think you'll hear the arguments that they don't speak French. We are more, I suppose, sympathetic.
Well, a lot of them don't speak English.
Well, no, that's a fair point as well. I think that because there's networks and the smuggling gangs will almost certainly have network with those who run illegal shops in this country. it is a whole network that we've not even begun to get to the bottom of. And I saw some documentaries today by the BBC who are trying to do such a thing. And we're fighting a losing battle on this. So I think there's wholesale change that's needed, or you're just going to continue in perpetuity.
Just very quickly, both, before we go to break, we'll conclude with Shabana Mahmood. But is this positive for her leadership ambitions? Should they come to fruition?
Well, for the country, maybe. Labour members probably won't like it. Labour members, traditionally at the moment, in quite a soft left place. You see people like Ed Miliband top the polls of any sort of Labour members. Shabana Mahmood's normally near the relegation zone, so I don't know really, is the truth.
James, what do you think?
I think it's actually a rare case of a politician trying to do the right thing by the country, and I don't think it will benefit her amongst Labour members, but it's an encouraging move to see our Home Secretary looking to do that.
Well, we'll be talking a lot more about the Prime Minister, the peril that he's currently in. Well, stay with us. Stay with me, with James, with Matthew. We'll be back in a few. Here's a break.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, welcome back to the Evening Exchange with me, Charlie Rillian, for Peter Cardwell. Get your get your calls and texts coming in. You can call us on 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk to 87222, or if you find us on X, say the word at talkTV, and we'll get your messages read out. We've got a few here, which I'll come to. Well, let's come to them now, actually. It says, good evening, Charlie. What a joy to see you at this time of the evening. Well, it's still early. I am usually up at this time. On a negative note, oh, here we go. This idiot in number 10 is outrageously shameless. He's an absolute disgrace and a traitor to this country. P.S. I'm not sure I can read that bit out at the bottom, but someone is trying to persuade my former guest, who is not the former Home Office Minister, he still is Shadow, Matt Vickers. Sophia there wants him to join Reform. Well, Matt, if you're listening, there you are. That's from Sophia. Steve says, the most divisive person in this country is Starmer himself. Add in the Labour Party, the Fabian Society, too many non-British MPs, and you have a cesspit of division. The country is done. And the majority of the problems lead back to Blair. Well, you know, Blair had his faults, and I absolutely agree with that, actually, to an extent. But he was the most successful Labour Prime Minister that this country's had, winning 3 general elections, a record 3 general elections, with the help of no other than Peter Mandelson. So let's talk about him, because he has dominated the headlines over the last, I think it's 8 days straight now. Front pages of every newspaper going. The Prime Minister, as we talked about before, can't get a break. What has gone wrong, Matthew, if I can ask you, with the communications of this? Because I would have thought it would have just been perfectly legitimate for the Prime Minister, who has apologised, you know, he's apologised for making the appointment, shouldn't have been made, error of judgment. But what he should have also, I think, been able to say is, but I made the appointment, it's unforgivable, but the justification is because he was part of the New Labour project that won 3 successful general elections. I overlooked and I was blinded by his friendships with a convicted paedophile. I ignored or overlooked or thought it could be mitigated, or the relationships that he had with Russia or China or the business links there. I'm sorry for that. That's what I'm making the apology for, and to the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. But I brought him back because throughout all of those faults, he actually was part of a winning campaign team that got Labour into power, that kept them in power, and I wanted him in Washington to deal with the most bizarre president that we might have had in our lifetimes. I'm sorry for that, but there you are. Why can't he just say that?
I think because he's misunderstood the process. I think what we learned from Ollie Robbins earlier this week was that he didn't necessarily fail his background check. It was a case of, we're likely to maybe not pass this, but mitigations can be made. Maybe he doesn't look at certain things or deal with certain people, or whatever way that may have been, we'll never know because it's a confidential process. He's therefore sacked Ollie Robbins without really asking why he didn't tell him, neglected to really go into detail. I think has panicked with a knee-jerk reaction. And now what we're seeing is the most public employment tribunal you're probably likely to see over the coming decade. Ollie Robbins will almost certainly end up with some huge payout, which is going to cost us all even more as taxpayers. He came across, even to a layman, not like political obsessives like us three, as somebody open across his brief, intelligent, decent, fair. And you compare that with Starmer in the chamber, who had carefully worded statements, scripted, inauthentic, and robotic. And I think people see that for what it is. I think also because he's made a mistake and doesn't want to clarify. From any cabinet minister I've spoken to over the last couple of days, they think Tuesday will be curtains for him. They think whatever the Philip Barton and Morgan McSweeney has to say, that will be it. Whether we'll see resignations before May, I don't know. But something has definitely changed, because even the more loyal MPs I've spoken to are of the opinion certain things I can't repeat at this time of day, but he has to go.
So you think on Tuesday, potentially, after Morgan McSweeney gives his evidence to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, you think that's when the Prime Minister could actually resign?
I don't know if he'll resign, but there will be movement. I'm already aware there's a certain leadership contender who's planning to do a big interview blitz post May the 7th. Angela Rayner has been having meetings with regards to what's going on. I believe her tax affairs are due to be sorted by next week, which is very convenient timing for her. I'm sure she'll pay even extra to HMRC for doing her a big favour in getting it in just in time. And it's inconceivable that he can limp on now. I think there was an idea he could maybe do so. But it is up to the Labour Party. Cabinet has to start resigning and they have to coalesce round a figure.
But your view is that it is now irrecoverable for the Prime Minister. His goose is cooked.
Yeah, I've been consistent on this for probably 12 to 14 months, that there is no way this man will survive. I think I was right in saying he will go after the May elections. This was before any of the Mandelson saga and all of what we've seen. I think that makes it even more conceivable that there's just no way. And actually, the broader point is you've got a load of brand new MPs whose sole purpose at the moment, they believe, is to hold on to their seats. Ain't going to happen under this Prime Minister.
So who do you think they could hold their seats under, do you think?
Well, whether anybody can. I've always said that Andy Burnham gives them the best chance. Whether they do it, I don't know. I think he gives them a fighting chance, half a chance. I think Angela Rayner would be best served as somebody's deputy. I'm unsure how she would cope as Prime Minister, personally. I think Wes Streeting is almost at risk of losing his own seat, let alone anybody else's, and I think his worldview would be fairly London-centric. Some people down here may be pleased with it, MPs down here. I'm not sure he reaches into the finer points of the Red Wall and elsewhere, personally. So, and I think there's a dearth of talent in Parliament across the board, truth be told. We're not best served at the moment in this country by those who inhibit the House of Commons.
I mean, James, I'd like to get your views on all of that, because there's a lot in there, what Matthew said will resonate with a lot of people. It makes a lot of sense. But from a policy perspective, I mean, how bad is it when the government can't actually, apart from today, which will get maybe page 3, 4, 5 in tomorrow's papers about the deal with France, but the headlines will still be about the permanent secretary at the Cabinet Office and the former permanent secretary at the Foreign Office have both said that due process was followed when it came to Peter Manston's vetting. The Prime Minister agrees that due process was followed, and yet a man's been sacked. So if it's all been followed, why on earth has Sir Ollie Robbins lost his job? And and Sir Keir Starmer that's seemingly not understood the process, but just wanted the process to be different. Well, that's not how it works. We all want things to be different. We all want laws to be different, but we can't just go abiding by our own rules of the game. He's still in his job. So how does it impact on government in terms of getting policy out and getting things done, and versus your reflections about everything that Matthew was just saying about Sir Keir's prospects hanging on after the 7th of May?
Well, I think when the last general election happened, people actually across the political spectrum, whether you voted for the government or not, were looking forward to the prospect of real change. And I don't think we've seen that, and I do think people are now fed up of this seeming psychodrama that we're seeing playing out in the front pages of papers and on the news almost every day. On the vetting process specifically, it's been really interesting over the last few days to actually hear more details coming out of select committee hearings on this.
It's been box office, isn't it?
It's been I have to say, it's been a really interesting watch. One of the most interesting things that I gleaned from it was that Kat Little, who was the Cabinet Office Permanent Secretary, was told last month that Mandelson had not passed this vetting. And I'm not going to sit here and defend Keir Starmer, because he did have a duty to be a lot more curious than he was, especially when you're dealing with a character like Peter Mandelson. But it isn't helpful if the Prime Minister of this country is not being given all the information he needs to make choices and govern. I do agree that we are likely now to see a change in the leadership of the Labour Party. I personally am not expecting anything quite as immediate as Tuesday. I think that Labour will keep a relatively united front in the locals. They will do badly in the locals. They will probably lose the Senate, and they'll lose hundreds of seats across the country to Reform and to the Greens. But what's been really interesting as well is to see how key Labour figures have been just starting to shift away from Keir Starmer. We saw Pat McFadden a few days ago, who was asked to directly back Starmer's firing of Ollie Robinson, and he said he thinks very highly of him. Miliband on Tuesday said he steered well clear of Mandelson when he was Labour leader. So we are now seeing what was quite unified support behind the Prime Minister, at least publicly, starting to evaporate. But Starmer is quite thick-skinned. There was that big question mark over his leadership around the time of the Gorton and Denton election, especially when he chose not to let Andy Burnham have a run. But I don't think he can survive this long term. I think in the short term he'll weather the storm. It makes political sense for the party to let him take the stick for the locals, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens after the 7th of May.
And slightly unfair, because you and I might not be as close to Labour parties as compared to Matthew, but if it is the case that the Prime Minister ends up having to walk away because the Cabinet might turn against him, they might say, come on, you've got to go, stop waiting for the backbenchers to say, I want this person to come in and become Prime Minister. Who's your money on?
Well, I would like to see Shabana. Surprise, surprise. Sadly, I don't think that's feasible. I think, you've seen Michael Gove rather funnily come out pretty heavily in support of Shabana.
I've heard of it.
And look, I think that actually she is trying to work in the national interest. She understands that illegal migration isn't now a left-right issue, it's a right-wrong issue. And okay, there's question marks around what you do when the migration crisis is sorted in terms of do you open legal routes or do you not, but there's an argument that we need to stop the boats, which is pretty consistent. And so I would love to see Shabana replace Starmer, but I'm not sure how practical that is.
Well, we don't know how soon it would be. It could come before we know it. But fascinating discussion. I mean, all we know is that whenever we talk about Keir Starmer, it seems to me that, people are up in arms about the way in which things are going, but they say who could actually replace him, because it could be so much more worse. Fascinating insights from both there. After the break, we'll be talking about St George's Day flag, St George's Day, apologies, and the flag of St George actually as well, going up in schools across the country. That's a Reform UK policy. What do we think about that? Let us know your thoughts as well. 0344 499 1000. Get in touch, and we'll be back very soon.
the handover briefing I was getting as I arrived at post was what I felt was a generally dismissive attitude to his vetting clearance. The focus was on getting Mandelson out to Washington quickly. Despite this atmosphere, an atmosphere of pressure, the department completed developed vetting to the normal high standard. Because the vetting process is not there to determine fitness for office or reputational risk, it's there to protect national security.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the Evening Exchange with me, Charlie Rowley, in for Peter Cardwell. And I'm still delighted to be joined by my two brilliant guests on the debate desk, Matthew Torbett, political commentator, and James Hodgkinson at the Adam Smith Institute. We were talking about Peter Mandelson a second ago. In the Telegraph today, there was a story that the US is blocking the UK police's investigation into Mandelson. Scotland Yard, the Scotland Yard inquiry, I should say, suggests that they're facing significant delays after President Trump's officials have refused to hand over Epstein file evidence. So does that just mean that the saga is going to run on and on even longer than we imagined?
I think it's not going away, and I think that's why Starmer can't continue. I do think it's interesting. I mean, I read in the Times last week, Mark Rowley had gone over to plead with the sort of FBI and their State Department, saying, you know, these things can take some time, but this is something that needs to be dealt with and aim to negotiate to access what they had, which is common, but I think can take some time because of circumstances. It seems that's not going to be the case. And I do think there's something interesting that the people that have fallen at the moment are all in the UK, or the people that have been reportedly or allegedly implicated, whether that be Prince Andrew, Peter Mandelson. And yet on the American side, we've not seen anything at the moment. The only person in prison is a woman, when it was mostly men taking part, so we're led to believe. And actually, there's now talks amongst Trump's Attorney General that she may be in line for a pardon if she goes cooperates with an inquiry of theirs. So they're not taking it certainly as seriously as we are when it comes to public standards and whether it was right or wrong to remain friends with a convicted paedophile that was known to everybody. But yeah, this keeps it in the headlines ever more, I think, for the Prime Minister.
James?
Well, the quick release of information would be an optimal situation for the Prime Minister. Sadly for him, that isn't going to happen. And as you've said, as long as it rumbles on, Starmer's reputation gets chipped away at, and I can't see this story going away anytime soon.
Well, it's going away for now, because we're going to talk about something a little bit lighter, which is St George's Day. Happy St George's Day to you both.
Happy St George's
Happy
Day.
St George's Day.
Have you been celebrating in any way?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No.
Not yet. The night is young. Thank you, Sophia. Yes, the night is young. James, have you celebrated?
Not yet, but I look forward to getting home and having some fun later this evening.
Well, I mean, people out there celebrating, they'll be surrounded by bunting. They'll be having that draped over their shoulders, or beer gardens, or the like. The St George's flag seems to raise concerns with people, which is beyond me, because it should be a symbol of our heritage, our history, our culture, all the things that we celebrate about this great country. And it's a day where us English folk, just like the Welsh and the Scottish and the Irish, can get on and have a good old knees up and celebrate everything that makes us unique within the Union, the Great British Union that we have here. I think it's a fantastic day, but people don't seem to like the flag very much at times. What do you make of that, James?
Well, look, in an era where we do have rising social tension, an increase in identity politics, and dog whistles from both the extreme right and extreme left, we need to focus as a country and as a nation on what unites us and not what sets us apart. And the St George's flag, if you're in England, it represents all of us, and everyone who resides here, I feel, should be able to take pride in that flag. And young people my age, often kind of don't quite get the whole national identity thing. And what I always try and signpost people to is the Platinum Jubilee, where we saw Union flags, St George's flags, Scottish flags, Welsh flags, all out, and we saw people together, coming together, friends, neighbours, family, and most importantly, strangers, to take part in something together and have pride in history being made. And I think that's ever more important now. We're seeing rising tensions in the world, and we need to be strong and united both as England and as a United Kingdom to face those challenges head on.
I couldn't agree more, but Matthew and I are still both young.
Thank you, Charlie.
No, thank you. I've got you back. Don't worry. But having said that, Matthew, it's the left, is it not? It's always the left that try to point to the St George's flag and say, no, that is a symbol of the racism that James was just talking about, isn't it?
Maybe the left, but also maybe people that are apolitical. I think we go through fluctuations with the flag. I think I can certainly appreciate people of a certain age and certain background seeing the Union Jack and feeling a certain way from when the National Front were around, and that people would be chased down the street and all manner of other things, beaten up and whatever. I think then we probably sort of semi-reclaimed it post-80s because of Cool Britannia, and the country was a great place to be. We had record growth. Everything was going well. The 90s was a great time to be born. You know, some of us say that was around then. This one doesn't have a clue. Doesn't realise how good it used to be. And then I feel like there was a change again, where people have allowed it to be co-opted with the rise of the EDL at the time. And I suppose it's a symbol of why you're using the flag for lots of people. I think the Jubilee is a great example of national and civic pride and something to get behind. When it is used in a more angry manner, I have concerns, I suppose, and other people will have concerns about what you're hoping it represents and why people may feel a certain way again. It is the national flag. I think the reform policy, there's more important things, but you can't force patriotism on people. You do that by building a country that's fit to live in, and at the moment, it isn't for many people.
Very, very quickly, in a couple of seconds, what makes you feel good to be English?
The football, and the most British thing ever is disabled scooters outside Wetherspoons. True sign of England.
Very good. I've just come back from Benidorm. I saw it. Myself. Go on, James.
For me, it's the people and the beautiful countryside we've got. I love it.
Oh, amazing.
That's a good one.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much to you both. There you have it. Matthew Talbot, political commentator, and James Hodgkinson of the Adam Smith Institute. There we are, research associate at the Adam Smith Institute. Coming up next, we've got the great Kevin Scoffield, political editor at the Huffington Post and a very good friend of mine. You don't want to miss it. Stay tuned. I've been Charlie Rowley. This is the Evening Exchange. Stay tuned to talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, good evening and welcome to the Evening Exchange with me, Charlie Rowley, in for Peter Cardwell. It's 8 o'clock. We've had a fantastic hour. We just had our debate desk there with brilliant panellists, Matthew Torbett and James Hodgkinson. What a great pair they are, talking all things Peter Mandelson, all things the Prime Minister. Where does he go next? That is the question. You've got cabinet ministers moving against him. You've got the two senior members of the civil service giving evidence to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, making it clear that the due process was followed when it came to approving Peter Mandelson for the role, something the Prime Minister has fallen foul of this week, headline after headline, day after day. It is bird-dogging this government. They're not able to get anything out, it seems, apart from an announcement today of £662 million worth of UK taxpayer money now going to France to help stop those boats. That's on top of the record sums that they've already had previously. Is it going to work? Let me know what you think. 0344 499 1000. You can call or send a WhatsApp to that number. You can also send a voice note. We love a voice note here. We haven't had any so far. Let's get them on. You can text the word TALK to 87222 or just message us on X at talkTV, and I promise you in the next couple of hours we will read as many as we possibly can. We're going to continue the conversation about the Prime Minister, about that deal with the French. We're going to be talking about a few other issues as well. We're going to be talking about St George's Day. Of course it is. It is the 23rd of April, and everybody, I think, has been out to celebrate. I hope you have, and if you have, do get in touch. Let us know what makes you proud to be English. Is it that cup of tea every now and again? Is it the strawberries and cream at Wimbledon? Is it a warm bitter at the cricket? All of these things, our history, our culture, our heritage. I want to hear from you what it is that you feel proud to be English. Get in touch. That number again, 0344 499 1000. You can call, text, or send a WhatsApp to that number. You can text, actually, the word TALK to 87222, or follow us by sending a message on X at talkTV. That's what you've got to say. Get onto X and just say X at talkTV, I beg your pardon, and we'll read out as many as we possibly can. But now, for the 8 o'clock slot, we've got a man who I know very, very well. He has got his finger on the pulse when it comes to everything going on in politics in Westminster and across Whitehall. Good evening to the one and only Kevin Scoffield, political editor at Huffington Post. Hello.
Good evening, Charlie. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm all the better for seeing you, Kevin.
You're too kind.
Yeah, you don't get that praise often, do you, from people sitting this side? Never. Well, you must come back.
Not even in my own house.
I'm sure that's not true. But let's kick off, Kevin, because I say you really have got your ear to the ground. You know everything that's going on in Westminster, and particularly amongst Labour backbenchers. What happens now with the Prime Minister? How on earth has he got into the state that he's currently in? This has been a story pointing Peter Mandelson, the vetting process. It's been headline news in all of our front pages, day after day after day. He's run out of rope, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, it's death by a thousand cuts, isn't it? I mean, this story first became a real problem for Keir Starmer when he had to sack Peter Mandelson last year. Then it came back again in the new year with the allegations about passing on secret government information during the financial crash to convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, and then there was the first tranche of documents released, which showed that Keir Starmer was warned about Peter Mandelson's friendship with Jeffrey Epstein before he appointed him to be ambassador, and now it's come back again over the revelations last week about the vetting, and that he had failed vetting. But still became ambassador. And, it's not over yet, Charlie. There'll be more documents are going to come out next month, we expect, which will also be embarrassing for Keir Starmer. Should he still be leader then? We just don't know. I think we can safely say he'll still be leader probably by May the 7th. I don't think any Labour leader anyone wants to take over ahead of the thrashing that Labour are going to get in Scotland, Wales and England that day. But after that, I think all bets are off.
I think why people find this story so confusing is because of the way in which the vetting process is conducted. So you have this UK SV, this UK security vetting group of people, these very small, tight group of people who conduct that vetting process on an individual. They go through all of the background. They ask you all the very intimate questions that nobody would really rather them ask in order to get a profile piece on you. They then only make a recommendation to the Foreign Office. And in this case, it was Sir Rowley Robbins, who was the Permanent Secretary at the Foreign Office, who we're told, although no one has actually seen this vetting document that was passed to them, that suggested that Peter Mandelson should not be approved vetting, that he wasn't, or that he was a risk, beg your pardon, so he shouldn't have been given the clearance that he eventually was awarded to by the Foreign Office. But it was the Foreign Office's decision to make. They made it, and they passed it on to the Cabinet Office, I think, to then inform the Prime Minister. And it took 3 weeks before the Cabinet Office informed the Prime Minister of that decision. And that's why the Prime Minister is so up in arms about not being informed, making the appointment. But, you know, the question is, should that appointment be made, in the first place? Does the vetting issue actually matter? Because we know all about Peter Mandelson. We know all about his background, whether it's his business interests or whether it's association with a convicted paedophile.
No, absolutely. I think most reasonable people looking at the story in the round would say, you know, there was already enough known before the security vetting even became an issue. There was already enough known to make Keir Starmer at least think twice. But we now know as well that he never actually spoke to Peter Mandelson face-to-face before appointing him. Now, Ollie Robbins a couple of days ago, giving evidence to the Foreign Affairs Committee, was talking about the constant pressure on Foreign Office officials to get this over the line from Number 10. And it's well known, I think, that Morgan McSweeney, who was Chief of Staff to Keir Starmer at the time, a close ally of Peter Mandelson, was very keen indeed that Peter Mandelson become the UK ambassador to America. I think he was the driving force behind it. He's giving evidence to the Foreign Affairs Committee next week. That's going to be absolutely box office, and hopefully he'll be able to shed a little bit more light on what on earth happened.
Well, we'll come on to Morgan McSweeney in a second, because it's, reflection of the operation that seems to be running Number 10. The Prime Minister has lost 2 Chiefs of Staff now, one in Sue Gray, the second in Morgan McSweeney. He lost his, I think, Director of Strategy, Tim Allen. He lost his Director of Communications, Matthew Doyle. Again, someone that came up in evidence at the Foreign Affairs Select Committee for wanting another job after being moved on, elevated to the Lords, but suspended by the Labour Party for having also a friendship with someone who later became convicted of having child sexual images. So not a great look. He's now lost his most senior, I would argue, member of the civil service in Sir Rowley Robbins, 25 years worth of experience. He's losing people left, right and centre. So, was Peter Mandelson really worth the risk?
Clearly not. And the thing was, there were people telling him that at the time, lots of people. I mean, what's interesting now as well, Charlotte, is that we've now got cabinet ministers in the form of Ed Miliband coming out and saying, well, if it had been up to me, he would never have got the job. When I was Labour leader, I steered well clear of Peter Mandelson, and David Lammy agreed with me. So it's interesting, they do say, don't they, that success has many fathers and failure is an orphan. Well, they're running for the hills now about Peter Mandelson. There's none of them want to admit that they had anything to do with it. So, but it's true though as well. Lots of people at the time said this is a huge gamble. A guy who'd lost his job twice under Tony Blair, all sorts of controversies, was brought back by Gordon Brown. Did a decent job as business secretary, I think, during the financial crash. We believed anyway, but always had this reputation as the Prince of Darkness. Trouble seemed to follow him around, so we always knew it was a massive gamble. Very unconventional appointment for such a senior diplomatic role as well, and it all blew up within 6 months, and Keir Starmer is still living with the consequences. As you say, other people have lost their jobs over this row. Will Keir Starmer ultimately lose his as well?
Well, we have to wait and see for that. I mean, but my question really to you, Kevin, is because, we're both in comms. You could say we're in communications. We try as we might. Why hasn't anybody actually just said to the Prime Minister, look, you can actually just get on the front foot here. You can apologise, as you have, for the appointment. You can take full responsibility for the appointment. You could say it should never have happened. But why don't you just be a bit more open, Prime Minister, and tell us why that appointment was actually made? And it was made because you were prepared, and you can apologise again for it, but you were prepared to overlook the black mark history that Peter Mandelson carried with him. You were completely aware that he'd lost his job twice in previous governments. You were totally aware that, yes, he had an association with a convicted paedophile, but he was in the private sector at the time. He had lots of business contacts. He had lots of contacts, full stop. What he does in his private time and the friends he has is his own business. You can try and get around it that way. But ultimately, I brought Peter Mandelson back into my government because he was the architect of New Labour. He supported Tony Blair. He got New Labour through 3 successful general elections. He is a master communicator. I was prepared because of, you wouldn't necessarily say this to the public, but because of the way in which I might not be able to communicate with my own backbenchers, but for the sake of the Labour Party, for the sake of this Labour government, to get it back on track and leading in the polls where it needs to be, delivering on the issues that matter most to people, I was prepared to overlook all of the bad stuff about Peter Mandelson and focus on his qualities. I was wrong about that. That was my call. That was my judgment. I got it wrong. That's why I sacked him, and that's why I apologise again to the victims. Why doesn't the Prime Minister just set it out in those terms and move on?
I just don't think he's that type of person. I think he finds it very difficult to emote in such a way. I think everyone knows that this was a huge error. I think it will be the one thing that will dog him to the end of his time in number 10, which may be sooner than we all think. One thing that always sticks in my mind, one person who has worked in number 10 under Keir Starmer told me he's a remarkably incurious individual. He doesn't ask questions. Now, the one thing I think we need to know is, why did he never ask about Peter Mandelson's security status? What was to stop him just taking Morgan McSweeney to one side and say, are we sure that he's cleared security vetting? Do we know that there's nothing being found in his background that may give us trouble down the line? But it would appear he never did that, and I think that is his biggest failing in this whole saga.
It's an impossible question because we'll have to wait till Tuesday, obviously, to see what Morgan McSweeney actually has to say. But you're right, he is before the Foreign Affairs Select Committee on Tuesday. That will be box office. This is the guy who has had his mobile phone stolen, we are led to believe. So some of the messages that would be on his device would not be available should they be requested by the Humble Address or the Cabinet Office if they're looking into all communications that are going to be of use, aid to the police, but also to the work in which the Cabinet Office is doing in the investigation that the Prime Minister has authorised in getting to the bottom of why Peter Mandelson was appointed. So we won't have any of that. But what is the expectation for Morgan McSweeney to say? Is he going to come out and defend the Prime Minister and say, well, actually, look, Sir Rowley Robbins at the Foreign Office said that he felt under pressure by number 10. Is Morgan McSweeney going to come out and say, no, that's totally wrong? Or is he going to come out and say, you know what, actually, yeah, I did put a bit of pressure on you because you were taking your time, you were dragging your heels, because the Prime Minister actually wanted Peter Mandelson there, and that goes against what the Prime Minister has said. What is Morgan McSweeney's character like? What is he actually going to, do you think, tell us, if anything, on Tuesday?
Well, I think one of the reasons this is so significant, Charlie, is that he is someone who's always been in the shadows. No one really knows him terribly well. No one's ever heard him speak in public, certainly not in a forum like this. So to have him dragged into the light in this way, I think will be pretty uncomfortable for Morgan McSweeney. This is not where he wants to be. But I don't think he's going to sell his old boss, Keir Starmer, down the river. I think he'll give a robust defence of his actions. He will say, I think the Prime Minister wanted Peter Mandelson to become the ambassador, and it was my job to make sure that happened. And yeah, I may have put a bit of pressure on the Foreign Office, but that was my job at the end of the day. I didn't go over the score. I was just helping to deliver what the Prime Minister wanted. I think we will see him, as I say, sticking close to the official party line, the government line, and trying to, no doubt, probably try and defend Keir Starmer's decision to sack Ollie Robbins as well. But it will be fascinating to see. He may well even be asked about his phone. Who knows? Because it is in some way relevant. You know, that, as you say, there'll be messages on that phone which may well have helped the committee carry out their work. So we might get a bit more detail on the theft of his phone. So that's why it's going to be, as I say, box office. Everyone in Westminster will be watching it. It'll be fascinating to see what he has to say.
Just a final one on the Prime Minister, and then I'll ask you about St George's Day, if I may. Labour MPs, you alluded to earlier on, are seemingly turning against the Prime Minister. Cabinet ministers, Ed Miliband, Shabana Mahmood, David Lammy, reportedly now going to the Prime Minister to say, look, you've got to up your game a bit. We heard from my great debate panel earlier on that there are people, supposedly about to make some big press conferences in the weeks ahead around the local elections, immediately after, perhaps when more of that information file drops on Peter Mandelson on around the 13th of May. Where do you actually see the point in which the Prime Minister may recognise or have to recognise, either on his own accord or by being forced out, that the game is up, his goose is cooked, it's time for the Prime Minister to step down?
Yeah, I mean, I think the 8th of May is going to be a real pressure point for him. I think when the full horror dawns on Labour MPs of how bad it's gone the night before, then I think there will be huge pressure on senior figures to come out and potentially say it's time for him to go. I spoke to one experienced Labour insider yesterday who said the key here is what the Cabinet does. If the Cabinet can agree on an alternative, on someone else to take over, then the game is up. Two people this person mentioned to me, Defence Secretary John Healey and Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper. That was corroborated by someone else who knows their stuff, who said to me, yeah, Yvette Cooper is definitely on manoeuvre. So that is one to keep an eye on. But there needs to be an alternative. That's the one thing I think that is keeping Keir Starmer's right now, is they can't agree on what comes next. Angela Rayner is still sullied, I think, by the tax situation. That's not been resolved. West Streeting, he's got his own Peter Mandelson links to contend with. Andy Burnham isn't even an MP. So there's no obvious alternative. And that, I think, is the one thing that's keeping him in position right now and may end up saving him. But he's so badly damaged, I don't think it can last for too long.
Well, you heard it here first. Yvette Cooper could be the dark horse in the race to succeed the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. Let's see how that one plays out. Kevin, just very, very finally before you go, have you been celebrating St George's Day today?
Well, as you can probably tell from my accent, I'm not English, so I'm Scottish.
Yes.
I'm married to an English woman. I've got English kids. They're obviously very proud to be English, and I'm proud to have them as my family. So if they want to celebrate, it's fine by me. I have to say, when England were in the Euros, I think in 2021, and they did well, I think they got to the final, there was a St George's flag hanging from our house. My wife hung the flag outside our door. So yeah, there are definitely some people in the house celebrating St George's Day tonight.
But I've seen you at the cricket before, Kevin. I've seen you with a warm bit. But is cricket not quintessentially English?
I guess it is, but you'd be surprised actually. A lot of people in Scotland like cricket. We tend not to shout about it, but there is Scotland does have a cricket team, believe it or not, and quite a lot of
breaking news here at Talk Towers. Scotland does have a cricket team. Who knew?
Yeah, I am an unusual Scot, and I do like my cricket. And yet, as you say, Charlie, I have seen you. And you have seen me at the cricket in the past. And a fine day we had as well.
We did indeed. Oh, Kevin, thank you so much for joining me this evening. And thank you for going through all of that and giving so much time. Kevin Scoffield there, political editor of the Huffington Post UK. Amazing insight there. And let's see how that plays out. Yvette Cooper, gosh, that could be something. She is experienced, isn't she? She was in the previous Labour government. I think she was working pension secretary at one time, but she was the shadow Home Secretary for a very long time. She was chair of the of the Home Affairs Select Committee. She went on to become the Home Secretary and completely failed, it seems to me, to get any kind of deal to stop those boat crossings, where Shabama Mahmood has actually made some sort of announcement today. So let's see how that plays out. That's one to watch. Get in touch. What do you think about that? 0344 499 1000. Call, text 87222. Send us a WhatsApp or a short voice note. Again, 0344 499 1000. We'll go to the break. After that, Kevin Foster, former Conservative Immigration Minister, will be talking all things about that Brighton sentencing of those migrants, of that terrible attack that's taken place, and the deal with the French. Stay tuned to talk.
Handover briefing I was getting as I arrived at post was what I felt was a generally dismissive attitude to his vetting clearance. The focus was on getting Mandelson out to Washington quickly. Despite this atmosphere, an atmosphere of pressure, the department completed developed vetting to the normal high standard. Because the vetting process is not there to determine fitness for office or reputational risk, it's there to protect national security.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and good evening and welcome back to Talk with me, Charlie Rowley, as part of the Evening Exchange, sitting in for the fantastic Peter Cardwell, who'll be here next week. And what a fantastic interview we just had with Kevin Scoffield. I can't get over that. Yvette Cooper could be the next leader of the Labour Party. Yvette Cooper could be the next Prime Minister of the country. Let me know what you think about that. But from one Kevin to another, I'm now delighted to be joined by Kevin Foster, former Immigration Minister and former Conservative MP. Kevin, hello. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Charlie. How are you?
I'm very well. Good to see you.
And happy St George's Day.
And happy St George's Day. Have you been celebrating?
Yeah, I'm at an event. Actually, I'm at an event this evening. I've just come up to quite a quiet room to do this interview. You can see the flags behind me as well. So yeah, no, it's important that we mark our patron saints' day and be proud of the country that has given so much, not only to the wider union of the UK, but also to the world.
I think you're absolutely right. A lot of people would agree with that, and so good to see that bunting out. I just want to start off with the story that was out earlier on, that three asylum seekers have been found guilty over a rape of a woman on Brighton Beach. You might have seen this story. It was dubbed a cynical, predatory and callous attack when a woman was separated from her friends on a night out when a trio found her, the trio, I should say, now the convicted felons, staggering in the street, alone and incapacitated. What's your views?
These men behaved like animals. They hunted down a woman to sexually attack her. She would have been absolutely terrified through what happened. And they showed absolutely no remorse afterwards. I think they actually went for a barbecue, according to some of the reports we're seeing from the case. So they behaved abysmally, appalling conduct. They've rightly been convicted of this and will face, obviously, prison terms. But the big question comes now about removing these people from the country. Two, I think, are Egyptian, one's Iranian. And to be clear, actually, the Refugee Convention is clear that if you behave and commit serious offences and present a danger to the country you claimed you'd come to purely for safety, you can be removed. But where the challenge is going to come, yet again, will be around those trying to argue that these three animals have human rights. Well, I'm afraid all three of them have forfeited any right for safety in this country with their behaviour. I hope that's a position the government will take, although I will have some sympathy with the fact that it is going to be difficult to remove someone back to Iran at the moment, given the current situation between the US and Iran. But that shouldn't preclude that the government looks to at the earliest opportunity when they are able to remove people back to Iran to make sure the Iranian member of this crew is on a plane there. However, this is where the Gordian knot of human rights law comes in. But it's high time we actually start that when people behave like this, we actually make clear, well, you forfeited whatever protection need you had here. We need to protect our own citizens, and back to your home country you should go and face the consequences there of your behaviour here.
I think you're absolutely right, Kevin. A lot of people would agree with that. And for every one person that comes into this country illegally, that goes on to commit such a vile and heinous crime, or any crime for that matter, that yes, should be deported. But for everyone that comes over to this country, who we provide housing, accommodation, health, dental care to, and all the bells and whistles, we are doing that out of the goodness of our hearts, opening out our homes and our wallets to people to protect them, when we could actually be helping someone that is in genuine need. That's what, grinds my gears, that we are far too soft and we don't call it out for what it is when these crimes happen for people that shouldn't be here in the first place. And as you say, it's very difficult to deport them when we're stuck in a very, very complicated set of laws where actually if we were out of the ECHR, some would argue, things would be a lot easier to get rid of these monsters.
Yeah, it would be. Certainly, if we're out the ECHR, it'd be easier to remove some of these individuals. As I say, ironically, the Refugee Convention actually has expressed provision around when someone behaves like this in a country they're apparently seeking safety in. You can say, well, actually, your behaviour far outweighs whatever protection need you have. But it is the ECHR that starts to present some of the challenges. And yeah, it's one of the reasons why I and many others think that, we had human rights many years before the ECHR applied. We're seeing it gained ruthlessly by people who've got absolutely no interest in others' human rights. These three men had no interest whatsoever in the rights of their victim. And it's time that the balance went in favour of public protection and that these three men should be removed from the country. And if there's consequences for them when they return to Egypt and to Iran, well, those are consequences they'd have been well aware of when they behaved the way they did, and it's for them to face them.
Well, I think a lot of people would agree with that. You talked about the law enforcement. The police have given an update on this awful, callous crime. I think we've got a clip that we can play to you now.
Thanks to her, 3 predatory offenders have been brought to justice and will now face sentencing for their crimes. While I hope this outcome can bring some measure of closure, she must live with the long-lasting trauma of this ordeal. My thanks also extend to the investigative team for their diligent work, our partners for their support to this investigation, and to the victim. Women and girls should be able to feel safe in public and in private at any time of the day or night. Brighton is a safe place, but incidents like this are a reminder of why we and our partners work so hard to protect women and girls and tirelessly pursue perpetrators should the worst happen.
Quite right too. And of course, everybody would have been outraged by that particular story, and rightly so. When you have 3 people, as we were just talking about, coming into this country, taking us for a ride, really. You know, we have opened our hearts and our homes to people, and they have completely abused that generosity. But on the flip side, there was a story last week, and it is appearing minute by minute to be a complex one. And maybe a slightly tragic one in Epsom, where there was accusations labelled against asylum seekers coming into the country, where there was an allegation of rape in Epsom. But the police have now dropped that case, having reviewed CCTV footage, having conducted many interviews, and resulted in the fact that, you know, the individual in question, the woman who was making the allegations, fell over, knocked her head, became confused, and was then very happy, though, for the police to obviously share that, what I've just shared with you today, on the back of an investigation. But we've got to be careful, haven't we, when we talk about crimes that have been committed, potential crimes that have been committed in this case, when we are told that actually they're being committed by people that shouldn't be in this country. We've got to be absolutely careful, haven't we, that we make sure that, you know, the criminal courts are able to do its work, that the police are able to do their work, and that is only until the point of conviction where we can then really be as outraged as we should be, particularly in the case of Brighton, but obviously not in the case of Epsom.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have to allow the police to do their work. And let's be clear, even if there had been an offence last week, you don't help keep your community safe by throwing things at the local police. You know, how that is ever going to improve the situation in your local community. You might be frustrated, you might be angry, but throwing things at the police is not how you express that. You know, there's ways of doing it. You can go on a demo, you can say what you want to say online. But the scenes of police officers having things thrown at them were utterly unacceptable last week. But yes, we do always have to remember, we do have a criminal justice system in this country for a reason. We have the presumption to innocence. And of course, the government's trying to take a lot of it away, the ability to be tried by a jury of your peers. And it's, it is important that people are able to, because there will be times when accusations are made that don't then follow through in terms of being acquitted, or where someone is found not guilty and has the right to therefore to be considered an innocent person. So there is something that we need to be aware of when discussing this, but we shouldn't hide from when there are cases like there is in Brighton, saying what does this mean? And even today we've still had people who think Brighton, and without going too much into politics, we think of its politics particularly in relation to the Green Party, and some of their members today have been complaining about the idea that Shabana Mahmood's going to take action to try and stop people crossing on French beaches. Well, it's a rather contrast between some of what we're seeing then happens when people who have no reason to leave France for safety or protection. Last time I looked, it was a modern democratic country with human rights laws comparable to ours, and they come here and behave appallingly. So I think, again, let's hope some of those people have a reflection on whether, just throwing open the border as they would want to do is really the right way forward.
I'll get your thoughts about Shabana Mahmood in just a second, but just for absolute clarity, let me read you out what the police put out earlier this evening, I should say, about that particular investigation in Epsom. They said a thorough investigation, including an extensive examination of CCTV footage of the woman's movements, house-to-house inquiries, interviewing witnesses and forensic tests, has been carried out. Through this examination of all evidence, we can conclude that no sexual offence occurred on this occasion, and we are closing the investigation. It goes on to say what has become clear is that the woman in her 20s, during a night out in Epsom, sustained an accidental head injury prior to making a confused report. The woman involved has given us permission to share this information with you, and she continues to be supported by the relevant services. We are now confident that there was no offence and there were no suspects. So that brings you the latest lines that we have in Epsom. But you mentioned Shabana Mahmood there, Kevin. I'm glad you did, because I just want to ask you, as a former immigration minister, what do you make, if you can, make of anything, the announcement that the government made today about another 662 million of UK taxpayers' money going to France to help stop the boats?
Yeah, I think it's probably, again, goes into the category of things that will make a difference, but won't make the difference. We've already seen work being done with France around law enforcement. To be fair to the government, there'll be some increased work on French beaches. But so some of the things, for example, they said they're going to have a riot squad. Well, you know, just one van driving around probably isn't going to make a huge difference to the numbers of people crossing the channel. And simply talking about, I think they were boasting that something like 6 taxi boats had been stopped, intercepted in French waters in the last 6 months. But I think if you go back to Saturday, 9 boats crossed the channel in just one day, which rather puts that number into perspective. So it's something that will probably make a difference. It won't make the difference. And perhaps the thing to really remember about the migrants being intercepted on French beaches is they're not then detained by France. They don't go, they're not removed from France. In many ways, they're then told, you know, don't be naughty and try and cross again. And guess what many of them then do very promptly afterwards. So a lot of those who were claimed to have been intercepted over the last year would probably have then just tried again at a later point and ended up arriving here in the UK. So it's something that probably does need to be done, working with France to try and enforce French law on the French beaches. But unless the vast majority were either being stopped on the beach or boats intercepted at sea and their passengers then returned to the French coastline, not brought to the UK coastline, it's not going to make a difference in the way people would say, you know, it's not going to stop the boats. It'll make some of a difference, but this isn't the total solution to this problem.
Kevin, really appreciate your time with us this evening. Thanks so much. You can go back and enjoy those St George's Day celebrations. I see that bunting in the background there. And wish you all the best. Hope you can join the show again soon. Speaking of St George's Day, after the break, we'll be talking to Aisha Ali Khan, a secondary school teacher in Bradford, just about what that flag means to her and St George's Day all round. Stay tuned. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, good evening, and thank you for joining me again. It's the Evening Exchange with me, Charlie Rowley, sitting in for Peter Cardwell. What a fantastic show we've had so far. We've talked about Starmer, we've talked about Shabama Mahmood and that deal with the French. Get in touch. Let me know your views on all of those issues. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word TALK to 87222, or you can follow us and send us a message on X, just at talkTV. Would love to hear your views on all of those things and just what you think it means to be English. Why celebrate St George's Day? Have you been celebrating today? Have you had a lovely cup of tea outside? Have you had a warm bitter beer in a garden somewhere? Let me know what it all means to you. Would love to hear your views and thoughts, because we're going to be talking about St George's Day now in a bit more detail. I'm delighted that I'll be joined by Aisha Ali Khan, who's a secondary school teacher in Bradford. Do we have Aisha, I beg your pardon, on the line?
Yes, I am here.
Hi. Hi. Aisha. Am I pronouncing that right? Is it Aisha?
Aisha, whatever you feel like. I'm happy with whichever pronunciation you're happy with.
Well, I've been called all sorts of things in the past, so I like to get it. I like to get it right. Look, let's talk about the St George's Day flag, because it has caused division and debate, not only on this programme and in this show, and in this channel, but people seem to really love it, so it goes up all over the place, particularly when it's St George's Day, but a lot of time outside St George's Day, on flag posts, on flag poles that we've seen as part of a campaign. People can find it divisive and borderline offensive. What's your view about the flag of St George?
So, first of all, happy St George's Day to everybody that's listening. People don't really know this, but St George is a really, really important figure in Islam as well. So we celebrate him, we venerate him. There's a massive celebration in May in the Middle East. And yeah, he's a really important figure for many people, many communities, not just Christians and people in the UK and England, but across the Middle East as well. And obviously, we have reports that he shared Palestinian heritage, and he was born in modern-day Turkey, and so on. So for us, he's not a figure of division. He's not a figure that we hate. And sadly, a lot of people argue that in the UK that people are using his flag, the white background and red cross, to say this flag is only for British people, white people, English people, and anybody that does not look English, people that look like me, for example. They need to leave, they need to go. And I think that is where a lot of the controversy and a lot of the confusion arises, because essentially we're celebrating the same guy. We're celebrating the same person. He's a saint for us as well. He's a massive figure in Islam. But people have decided to use his flag and in his name to say this country is just for English people, and everybody else that is not English needs to leave.
So, well, you and I sound as if we're in agreement. We're very supportive of the flag, and that's a brilliant history. And thank you. I didn't know that St George was celebrated in other cultures.
Yeah. His Muslim name is Al-Qadr, and he is actually mentioned in the Quran. The figure Al-Qadr is mentioned in the Quran as well. So he's such an important person for us.
Well, now we know. But not everybody takes that view. And I want to know why, in particular, what is the view like in Bradford? You've got your ear to the ground. You're, a community leader there. You're a teacher. Are there many people that have raised the flag there? Have you got it in your school, for example? Are people celebrating in the way in which we've seen, if you're watching on talkTV, we've seen loads of celebrations taking place across the country. Have you been celebrating in Bradford? Has your community been celebrating the flag of St George today?
Definitely. We've seen in primary schools in the past, we've had, my son, he's older now, but when he was young, we used to have a regular St George's Day play. So somebody would be the dragon, somebody would be St George, somebody would, there'd be lots of soldiers and so on. So this is something that's celebrated across all communities, and rightly so, because obviously we live in England and he's the patron saint of England. And if we were in Scotland, for example, we would celebrate we would celebrate St Andrew's Day, and and in Wales it would be St David, and in Ireland it would be St Patrick. So we would definitely be celebrating all the different days as well. And I think, look, what I notice, when I speak to people, is exactly the same reaction as you: surprised, like, oh my God, we didn't know, and that's fine, because there's nothing to be embarrassed about if you don't know something. But I think we need to take our time to talk to one another, to understand, and to kind of break down those barriers. So right now I'm at an anti-fascist event in Keighley. We've had such a good turnout. We've got 2 former MPs, 1 Conservative, 1 Labour Party member here. There's lots of there's lots of councillors, and we're talking about how we can bring the community together to help and support one another. And I think that is the beauty of this country, when we're living in you know, in the UK, we're living in England. We understand the values, we understand tolerance and acceptance of one another, and those are the values we definitely need to celebrate more.
Well, you talked about just being on a rally there with a former, I think you said former Labour and a former Conservative MP. But what is your view then, as a school teacher as well, about Reform UK's announcement today, where they've said that they want to have a more patriotic curriculum in schools throughout the country, and that they would have the Union flag flying above every school and a picture of His Majesty the King? Is that something that you would support as a teacher? Is that something that your community can get behind, or do you think that's too far?
Oh my gosh, Charlie, if you need to come and see the actual curriculum in our schools. 70% of, well, actually more than that. In it, for example, history. We teach obviously Roman history in year 7, but then we also teach 1066, the invasion of England by William the Conqueror.
The Battle of Hastings. The Battle of Hastings.
Battle of Hastings. Then we go into medieval England. Then we look at the King Henry VIII, the Reformation. Then we look at the period of time between obviously the 15th to the 19th centuries. Then we teach Queen Victoria's England, the Industrial Age, right up till World War I. World War II and Britain's contribution and how we helped to defeat fascism in the Second World War. And then we go into modern day history. So there's the history of England. When we talk about history, 95% is British history. And obviously let's talk about English now. We teach English poetry. For GCSE, we teach Shakespeare. We teach lots and lots of British authors as well. Jane Austen, for example, the Bronte sisters. So this is something. The curriculum is already very, very English, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No,
and besides.
I think you're right. No. Just to interject, because you've been very clear about the curriculum, and I couldn't help but notice the Reform announcements, the Reform UK's announcements, that they wanted the curriculum to be over 60%. I think focused on patriotism. Where my friend and former boss, full disclosure, Michael Gove, tweeted out that actually, if you'd looked at the curriculum, it's more than 60% as it currently is. So he would argue against that. But what about the flag? Do you think there should be a flag above your school?
I think it's a choice. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the flag, but obviously in a previous conversation today, I've already spoken about how the flag has been hijacked by far-right groups who use it as a symbol to divide and who basically are using it to promote far-right ideology, to basically promote this idea of patriotism, of British pride, nationalism, but nationalism at the cost of ethnic communities, ethnic minorities in this country.
But that's a minority of people, isn't it? That's going to be a minority of people that hijack it in the way in which you describe. The overwhelming majority of people surely are like what we were talking about at the very start of this conversation, people that are just proud to be English. They're proud of our country, our heritage and our culture and our background.
Absolutely, and if you remember, I'm going to push your memory buttons now. If you remember 20 plus years ago when Amir Khan won, I think he'd won an Olympic medal.
He's local. Medal, I think. He's local to Bradford, isn't he? Bradford boxer?
Bolton, yes.
That's it.
So, and if you remember, his dad was wearing a British waistcoat. His waistcoat was the British flag, the Union Jack. And then when Amir Khan won, he draped himself in the Union Jack as well. And that picture was beamed all over the world. It literally went viral. And that's the kind of image I want to say that, look, our communities, the Pakistani community, for example, which obviously I'm a member of, the Sikh community, the Hindus, the black community, we have no issues with the flag whatsoever. What we do have an issue with is when people who tend to use the flag to say, get out of our country, this is our country and you're not welcome. And I think, like you said, there's a minority, but that minority is so loud. They're online, they're coming into towns and putting all these flags up. And just on a final note, I teach disadvantaged children as well, and the amount of passion and energy that goes into spreading hate, we could actually convert that energy and to help and support white working class boys so that they've got something positive in their lives as well.
I think a lot of people would agree with that, Maisha. I'm so sorry we've got to bring it to an end, and I'm not too sure about a Union Jack waistcoat, but I'm more familiar with a Union Jack Jerry Halliwell dress, but enough about my weekend attire. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. That was Aisha Ali Khan. Thank you for joining us. Stay tuned. This is Charlie Rowley, the Evening Edition. This is Talk.
Handover briefing I was getting as I arrived at post was what I felt was a generally dismissive attitude to his vetting clearance. The focus was on getting Mandelson out to Washington quickly. Despite this atmosphere, an atmosphere of pressure, the department completed developed vetting to the normal high standard. Because the vetting process is not there to determine fitness for office or reputational risk, it's there to protect national security.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the Evening Edition with me, Charlie Rowley, sitting in for Peter Cardwell. And we're going to go straight to our third and final Kevin of the day. Joining us now, Kevin Hurley, former Met Police Superintendent. Hi, Kevin.
Hello there.
Hi, thanks so much for joining us, and happy St George's Day.
Yeah, and happy St George's Day to you as well.
Thank you very much.
Unfortunately, I haven't actually got my St George's tie, but I have got a red one on, so...
Perfect. And I was wearing a red tie earlier on, and I have to say, I'll tell you how shallow I am. I was wearing a red tie last week, and I just thought, well, I better, people might think I've only got one tie. So I've gone for blue today. But good to see sporting the colours. Now, Kevin, we've got a huge crisis in this country, haven't we? We've got shoplifting taking place right up and down our high streets in every community. It seems we've got phone thefts taking place on the streets of our cities, being snatched out of your hand. We've now discovered, courtesy of the BBC, that the likes of cocaine, cannabis, laughing gas and prescription pills are being offered for sale in mini-marts on our high streets. And this has all been undercovered by researchers who, for the BBC, secretly filmed, I should add, particularly in the West Midlands area. What on earth is going on our streets today, and what can we do to stop this madness?
Well, Charlie, we didn't get here overnight. If you think back to 2010, when Theresa May and Cameron got into power and austerity started, they set about chopping into, if you like, almost a nervous system of the police service up and down the country. And with direct relevance to this, they also chopped in to local authority budgets, which meant that the trading standards officers who used to supervise high streets up and down the country were slashed in number, and their work was piled upon them on other areas of activity. Some of the consequences of austerity, and I'll just stay with this specific issue, which is low-level street dealing. Because of austerity, the foot patrol officers that were once your neighbourhood constables have all but been cut from the police inventory up and down the country, certainly in terms of numbers. But the other casualty has been the local divisional police crime squads. Basically, your plainclothes Starsky and Hutch boy girls, if you like, turned up in jeans and trainers, who dealt with the medium to low level criminals who would be doing this kind of activity, your local street dealers and so on, your local shops, working in... Are you still there?
Yes, yeah, no, I'm listening away. Sorry, Kevin, I'm hanging on to your every word.
Yeah, working in conjunction with their local weights and measures or trading standards officers. Of course, they've all gone to a large extent. So these kind of shopfront money laundering venues, places that will deal with illegal drugs, illegal sales of types drugs like nitrous oxide, which is extremely damaging to kids and so on. It's sold by unscrupulous people. And one of the things, if you think about it and look at most high streets up and down the country, is the proliferation of the barber shops.
Yes.
There are a huge number of Turkish barber shops up and down the country. You can notice me, I don't go to barber shop very often and don't need to anymore. But I do ask myself why literally almost in every parade of shops around the area where I live in Surrey, there are Turkish, Kurdish barber shops. And my suspicion, and it would be this, having been a career detective all my life, is these are money laundering centres for the Turkish Kurd organised heroin dealing organisations that effectively control the heroin importation trade in the UK. And so it goes on with Chinese type shops with the nail bars, where they perhaps might use slave people, these money launder for the triads, but no one is supervising or investigating those groups anymore.
You're absolutely right. Nail bars, car washes, the like. But we've only got a couple of minutes, so just for brevity, everybody talks about this. You've talked about the barbershops. Nigel Farage has talked about it. I know Kemi Badenoch has talked about it. If people know that it's going on, why on earth can't you just close them down?
Because you need to have an actual viable reason to do that. And to get that, you need to have people available to investigate, if you like, what's going on. Well, the police have most certainly have not got people available anymore to investigate. And as I said before, the trading standards have been cut right back. And those police officers are available as a result of the wokery and legislation being brought in about, I don't know, people saying unpleasant tweets and Facebooks. These abstract people from street policing, and tendency, because police officers on the street now are so young and inexperienced, they don't really know what to do, and they will take the easy, low-hanging fruit, which is minor infringements of one form or another, and it's far more difficult to investigate a shop that is perhaps a money laundering centre, because it's well above the capability of street police.
Kevin, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much. Gosh, crime ridden on our streets. What can we do to stop it? Blaming austerity. We need more experienced police officers, and well, we need a lot more than that in my view. But thanks so much, Kevin. Do join us again. You're listening to the Evening Edition with me, Charlie Rowley. Join us again after the break. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, welcome to the final hour of the evening edition with me, Charlie Rowley, sitting in for the brilliant Peter Cardwell. This is only my second time in this chair, if you hadn't already noticed, but I'm being guided through by a brilliant team that I can see through that window there, who I think are chomping at the bit to get through this hour to go out and celebrate what will remain of St George's Day, which we've been talking about throughout the evening. What is it about St George's Day that you love the most? What is it that makes you feel proud to be English? Is it those cups of tea, those multiple cups of tea that you can have throughout the day? Is it drinking a warm, bitter beer at the cricket, or the strawberries and cream at Wimbledon? Oh, the history, the heritage. Or is it William Shakespeare? It is William Shakespeare Day today, where I've seen on multiple sources schools reminiscing about some of the plays that he's put together, reciting some of the monologues, the great monologues, which I might pass on giving you by the end of the show. But we've been talking about some serious stuff. The Shabama Mahmood announcement today that the UK is now going to send £662 million of UK taxpayers' money to France to help stop the boats. When we hear they're moving to Belgium, they're just coming across from Belgium. So what on earth the French are going to do is absolutely beyond me. But we've been talking also about the peril of the Prime Minister. Is he in danger for good now? Is his goose cooked? We keep hearing time and time again that the Prime Minister's time is up in number 10, but he still hangs on. He's still hanging on. We've got local elections on the 7th of May. We've got a King's speech that I have to bring forward to Parliament, setting out a new legislative agenda to keep him in post. But then we'll also have more of the Mandelson files dropping in and around the 13th of May. And of course next week, just because it wasn't enough this week to have two senior Whitehall permanent secretaries give evidence to the Foreign Affairs Select Committee detailing the reasons why Peter Mandelson was in the position that he was in the first place, where there's been contradiction, there's been chaos in those committees. We've now got Morgan McSweeney, the man who had his mobile phone allegedly nicked, the former Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister. He's the second former Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister. He's going through them like hotcakes. He will be up next week. We'll be interested to see what he has to say. But there is only one woman that I'm interested in to hear what she has to say, just to clarify. She is an absolute wonder, stalwart, and I have had the pleasure of being on that side of the desk with her debating. She joins me now. It's Linda Dorbley, journalist and political commentator. Linda, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Charlie?
I'm very well. However, I have just been corrected that despite that big intro of yours, I pronounced your name wrong.
Everyone does.
I thought everyone does. I thought you said I've only one task, which is probably true too. How are you? Happy St George's Day.
Happy St George's Day to you too.
Have you been celebrating at all?
I haven't really had a chance. I've been so busy on the subject of Sir Keir Starmer that I've barely had time to have a break. But I'm sitting down now with a cup of tea, which to me is very English.
Me too. Is it a breakfast tea?
I have to admit, it's rooibos, which is a kind of... It's actually a South African tea, but it's caffeine free. And I've got to go to bed quite quickly to get up early tomorrow morning to talk again about Sir Keir Starmer. So I can't have anything with any caffeine in it. Not right now.
Well, let's do a bit of a rehearsal before your big day tomorrow. Let's kick off with Sir Keir Starmer, a man who seems to be in constant peril, has undergone, I think, day 8 or 9 now of waking up in the morning, opening his front door, seeing the newspapers at the bottom of his doorstep, and it's front page after front page after more Mandy misery. What do you make of it all? Can the Prime Minister hang on?
No, but the question is, when would he go? I mean, that's my observation, and you can always be wrong about these things, but I do think now it's a question of when, not if. Unlike a lot of people, I was on television like almost every day, and last weekend people were saying possibly by Friday, but I didn't really think that could be the case, because the Labour Party isn't quite as as swift as ejecting its leaders as the Conservative Party. The Conservative Party, once it decides it's got a taste of blood, it will get rid of its leaders quite quickly, as we've seen. It's much harder for the Labour Party, but there are moves afoot now, I think. But what my speculation is that people will leave Keir Starmer in position now until after the local elections. And that's because these elections are predicted to be utterly catastrophic for the Labour Party. So I assume that, A, they will leave him in place so that he can take the blame for several things. He can be the scapegoat. But also, what leader could you possibly get in the time frame, and who would want to do it right now? The thing is, it's not a great time for his replacement. So everyone wants to wait until after the local elections. After that, I think he could possibly limp through until the summer recess. And during that summer recess, everyone will be planning and plotting about what they're going to do. So my guess would be the autumn. But you never know. These hearings are sometimes so, they have such big consequences that perhaps the Parliamentary Labour Party will just say, well, we've had enough. I mean, those candidates are now going on the doorstep trying to defend Keir Starmer when they know that he's almost indefensible in the eyes of the voter.
Well, you talked about the plotting and planning that may or may not be taking place, but we suspect that it is. We've had it is. We've heard reports that several cabinet ministers, no less Shabana Mahmood, David Lammy, have both, Rachel Reeves even, have suggested to the Prime Minister that you need to change course, you need to up your game. He was asked about this at an interview, I think, at a St George's Day celebration earlier on today. Let's just take a listen to what he had to say when asked that question.
Are you confident the Cabinet is fully behind you?
The Cabinet is working really hard on a huge amount of issues and what we're delivering at the moment. We're preparing for the King's speech and all the further measures that we're going to need to take the country forward. And of course, the issue we discuss at Cabinet a lot in recent weeks is the war on two fronts, the ongoing war in Ukraine and the developing situation in Iran. What we discuss at Cabinet is the international aspect of that, but also the domestic impact in relation to that and the measures that we need to take to ensure that we're assessing the risks and making sure we're protecting people in this country from those impacts.
Well, what do you make of that, Linda? Because I'm, holding my head in my hands listening to that, because he's he's talking again about saying, well, first of all, confirming that, yes, he thinks that the Cabinet are all behind him. He said that they're working...
He didn't confirm that, did he? He was asked a question, is the Cabinet behind you? Not once in that answer did he reply to that question.
Well,
he went about loads of other things.
They're working very hard, I think he said, but not that we'd know it, because of the way in which the headlines are constantly focused on the saga that he is involved in, and it was a decision that he made to appoint Peter Mandelson as his main man in Washington. He's apologised for that, but no less, it was his decision. So he's sort of dragging everybody down around him. But he goes on to talk about the wars in Russia, in Ukraine, and how that will impact, yes, mildly on energy bills. I don't say it will impact on energy bills mildly, but the effect he was talking about is mild. But he's not talked about the NHS. He's not talking about the cost of living. He's not talking about growth, which was the #1 word in their manifesto at the last election. That is what people in this country really care about. Those are the domestic issues he should be focused on. Why on earth does this Prime Minister just not get it? Or do you think he does, Linda?
No, he doesn't get it. And all of this is a big distraction, Charlie, from those issues you've quite rightly outlined. Now, the fact of the matter is, this isn't going to go away. Fundamentally, it's about his truly disastrous decision to appoint Peter Mandelson. Now, we can get lost in the weeds of who said what when. Was it an amber light? Was it a red light? Was so-and-so properly informed? But I'm afraid that this has cut through with the general public, the voter. And what they say to me, because I'm always chatting around my little town here on the Thames, and they say, Keir Starmer, he always throws people under the bus. That's the phrase they use, and that's the phrase that has cut through. And they're not wrong to think that, because it's the Peter Mandelson decision and what it says about his leadership. He is lacking in leadership and political nous. And that is a fundamental problem that won't go away. I've been saying for months, the problem for Keir Starmer, besides the specific problem of Peter Mandelson, is he lacks vision, and therefore he can't build a strategy. And without a strategy, you haven't really got a roadmap. And that's why we've seen so many U-turns. But the Peter Mandelson thing has really hit at the heart of people's mistrust of him. They don't trust him now because they think that he can jettison people willy-nilly and drive a tractor through their career, as he did with Ollie Robbins. I mean, I was driving into a TV studio that night. I got in the car and he had a job, and I got out and he didn't have a job. I don't see how that can be legal. Personally, I know I've been told by people who are legally qualified that Ollie Robbins has a case for unfair dismissal because you can't call what he did gross misconduct, which is the only way of getting rid of someone immediately. Whether he would choose that path, I don't know. A lot of people want him to get his job back, but I don't see how he can do that in the current circumstances. And there's been some whispering about him possibly getting an ambassadorial role. Well, that would be a kind of poetic justice in that.
Well, exactly. Look, you're absolutely right, because, you know, this is a complicated issue, and without getting too much into the weeds of it, the charge is that, or the reason why Sir Ollie Robbins was discharged is because the Prime Minister thought that actually the process should have been a particular way, that he should have been informed of information that was given to Ollie Robbins, but not the Prime Minister. However, that's not the way it works. You know, it is the UKSV, that's the UK Security Vetting, make a recommendation, only a recommendation to the Foreign Office. It's then for them to decide whether they have been able to mitigate any of the concerns that have been raised in that recommendation, and then award vetting. Now, this is what is so that's complicated enough. But the real issue is that you've got now Cat Little, who is the head of the Cabinet Office, effectively, and head of the propriety and ethics within that department. You've got the former head of the Foreign Office, the Permanent Secretary, Sir Ollie Robbins, both saying that due process was followed. The Prime Minister's defence is that due process was followed. So why has somebody lost their job? It's, you know, it's the Prime Minister wanted a particular part of that process to be different and more helpful to him. I think he has an argument for that. Personally, I don't understand why the Prime Minister couldn't have seen, when you're appointing someone that is a political appointee, the outcome of that, the recommendation that UKSV put forward. But put that to one side, that's not the process. Everybody has said that the process has been followed at all times. That's the Prime Minister's defence, and yet Sir Ollie Robbins has lost his job.
Yeah, and it has a tractor driven through the middle of his stellar career. It's absolutely abysmal behaviour. It really is. And as someone said to me, it must be getting rather crowded under that bus.
Well, exactly, because as you just said, you know, he's lost two chief of staffs now, one in Sue Gray, now Morgan McSweeney. He's lost two cabinet secretaries. That is the highest office of civil service land you can think of. That was Simon Case and Sir Chris Wormald. He's now lost a permanent secretary in the Foreign Office. He's lost his Director of Strategy, Tim Allen. He lost his Director of Communications, Matthew Doyle, but we won't cry too much about that one. But he's losing people left, right and centre. This is this is the heart of government. This is number 10 Downing Street, the most famous door in the world that man is operating, leading behind, and it feels like complete and utter chaos.
You see, the thing is, you are either leading or you are not. And the fact of the matter here is, no matter how complicated the situation is, Keir Starmer currently is our Prime Minister, and he needed to grip the situation, at least show some curiosity, as everyone has been saying, and try to make sure, because he knew perfectly well this was a contentious appointment, he should have been staying right on top of it all the time. You wouldn't get the CEO of a multinational company behaving this way. You know, they're not just drifting around, you know, trying to absorb the big picture, you know, while their advisors scuttle around dealing with the detail. This one particular appointment, so this is Peter Mandelson, who's twice been binned by his own party. He has nicknamed the Prince of Darkness, for example. He's known links with Russia, known links with China. You would think that he would pay attention to the man he is appointing to the most important diplomatic post that we have. On top of all of that, you've got Karen Pierce, the incumbent ambassador, who's well thought of by Donald Trump. Apparently, the American president thought she should remain in post. Instead, Peter Mandelson is being shoehorned into that role. Now, you would have thought in those particular circumstances, you would stay on top of the situation personally.
Can I ask you then, just finally, on Mandelson and the Prime Minister, and we will move on, I promise you, but just as a journalist and political commentator, but all-round communicator, I asked this question earlier on to Kevin Scoffield, and I was just making the case, look, the Prime Minister has taken responsibility for that appointment. He's apologised, and he says that he sacked him, and he's apologised to the victims of Epstein. That appointment should never have taken place. But why, when he is asked the question, did you appoint Mandelson in the first place, he can't answer the question? Why doesn't the Prime Minister just say, you know what, I took a risk on Peter Mandelson. I knew about his friendship and the connections that he had with Jeffrey Epstein. I was aware of his private businesses and the connections that they had to other people, but I was prepared to put that to one side. I was prepared to overlook that at face value on the back of a conversation I had with Peter Mandelson, who wanted that job, because he was one of the most successful architects of a political party, of a government in the new Labour administration, winning a record 3 general elections for Tony Blair. I was prepared to bring him back into government to get this government firing on all cylinders, and I was prepared to... That was an error of judgment. I apologise for that, and that's why he's gone. Why doesn't the Prime Minister just come out and be honest with us about that?
Because I'm not entirely sure this was his decision. I think when we hear from Morgan McSweeney, and bear in mind, we've never heard anything from Morgan McSweeney other than his resignation statement, I think maybe more light will be thrown upon this. Because clearly Peter Mandelson was a very, very able politician. I don't think people dispute that. But he was a very risky appointment. You see, it wasn't, shall I appoint a diplomat or shall I appoint a politician? It was, there is a diplomatic opportunity here to leave Karen Pierce in post, or should I appoint specifically Peter Mandelson? Now, who was driving the bus about all of this? That would be interesting to find out. So once we get past all the process that will be dealt with inevitably next week, and I think Sir Philip Barton, Ollie Robbins' predecessor, should throw some light upon this, then I think we would be more able to see what realistically has happened here. I've got no doubt that Peter Mandelson wanted that appointment, absolutely no doubt at all. But who brought the pressure to bear on Keir Starmer? Because I'm not sure it was originally his idea.
Well, you're absolutely right. And we don't have that much long to find out. On Tuesday, Morgan McSweeney will be appearing ahead of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, where we might get some light on those questions. Linda, please stay with us. I know we'll be talking more about Starmer. Who could replace Starmer? Could it be Lord Hermer? Think about that. We'll be talking about Lord Hermer and the shocking revelations that he's been involved in, attempting to prosecute British troops, and we'll be talking about more of that Epsom and tragic case in Brighton. Stay tuned. This is Charlie Rowley on the evening edition. This is Talk.
the handover briefing I was getting as I arrived at post was what I felt was a generally dismissive attitude to his vetting clearance. The focus was on getting Mandelson out to Washington quickly. Despite this atmosphere, an atmosphere of pressure, the department completed developed vetting to the normal high standard. Because the vetting process is not there to determine fitness for office or reputational risk, it's there to protect national security.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening and welcome back to the Evening Exchange with me, Charlie Rowley, in for Peter Cardwell. I hope you're staying tuned, like my team, through the glass that are keeping us on track all the way through to 10 o'clock. And I'm still being joined by the wonderful Linda Jubilee, who I've got that right this time. Great pronunciation. Thank you for staying with us, Linda. Linda, I just want to talk about a chap that you might have heard of, Richard Hermer, who is the Attorney General. There was a story out about him earlier on today, this morning, about how he had, in his former life as a QC, a Queen's Counsel, that is one of the most senior barristers you could have. They're now obviously Casey's under the King's Counsel. But the story that was out this morning was that he was being accused of continuing to pursue British troops, British military personnel that had conducted operations in Iraq. They had put their lives on their line to defend this country at the helm, at the service and behest of the former Labour Prime Minister, Sir Tony Blair, that I talked about. The update that we have to this story, coming out tonight, again from the Telegraph, their brilliant investigations team, is that the MOD queried the rate of which he was charging per hour to go and prosecute, effectively, our British military personnel. He was charging them a whopping £450 an hour. That is a disgrace, is it not?
Yes, it's apparently, at the time, was twice his normal rate. So you would think maybe someone seeking to redress the balance of justice for people from Iraq, he might be able to make a lower fee for those claimants. But no, it's twice his normal rate. Now, Lord Hermer apparently justified the potential payout by arguing that the claims had only a 50% chance of success because the army had already investigated and found the allegations unsubstantiated. I mean, I wonder why this has got this far anyway. I get increasingly concerned about soldiers who face these investigations and possibly prosecutions many years later. It is terribly difficult to ascertain what happens in the fog of war. And in this case, in Operation Danny Boy, it was alleged that the British Army soldiers had killed farmers when it transpired that they were actually part of an Iraqi armed unit. Now, I seriously think that we've got to have a little think about this. In Australia, Ben Roberts-Smith, the most highly decorated soldier in the land, who's been awarded the Victoria Cross, one of the few people actually living to have the highest award that this country can bestow, is being hauled through the courts because of allegations of what he did in Afghanistan. I mean, that's a notoriously difficult country to actually investigate. And on top of that, years after these things happened. Now, Lord Hermer no doubt wants to embellish his human rights credentials, but I don't think he should be doing that when events were a long time ago, when they have clearly been unsubstantiated by the British Army, that these soldiers, are in the heat of battle, under a tremendous amount of pressure. And he certainly shouldn't be embellishing his career in this way at the taxpayers' expense.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, he's not here to defend himself, and he would probably say, if he was, in relation to the article, that he was only operating and working on a no-win, no-fee basis. So he might not have got a penny. But you can just imagine prosecuting someone who has served maybe in Helmand Province, somewhere else in Iraq. The mental strength to live through that when you come back to the UK, where the war wasn't that well supported at all, and the idea that you're then being chased, maybe however long or short after that, you could easily be someone that finds yourself that just capitulates and say, you know what, I don't want to deal with this legal claim. You know what, just I'm done. And you find yourself then convicted and being prosecuted wrongly because you just can't face going through a criminal trial or going through those proceedings. And this guy creams up and cleans up with £450 per hour worth of UK taxpayers' money.
Yeah, and we don't know, none of us can truly empathise with these soldiers because war is a very, very brutal business. Quite frankly, I think taxpayers' money would be better invested dealing with some of their post-traumatic stress that they undoubtedly suffer. The number of suicides in ex-veterans, the number of mental depression cases that exist amongst their number is truly horrifying. The homelessness that exists there, horrifying. We should be supporting these soldiers and not dragging some of them through the courts. It's ridiculous.
I think you're absolutely right. And from one horrifying story to another, where 3 men, asylum seekers, have been found guilty over a rape of a woman on Brighton Beach in what was described as a cynical, predatory and callous attack. This is a story that will, I know, certainly got the phones going in the last few hours. What is it about people who are seen coming into this country, claiming asylum, that are being put up in hotels and housing accommodation, that are getting their medical bills paid for, that are here at the goodwill and of the UK taxpayer, where we are here opening our hearts and our homes to people who we believe, I certainly don't believe all of them, and I don't think we should believe all of them, but there are many people that would say, no, anybody that comes over, they are genuine asylum seekers. They are genuinely fleeing persecution. We must help as many as we can. And of course these people turn out to be complete charlatans. They turn out to be complete and utter monsters that go on and commit these kinds of crimes. And we have to pick up the pieces, not only in terms of the legal framework, but we've now got a woman whose life has been changed completely forever.
And both the judge, I think, and the police said that the situation was truly horrific, and they praised her courage. But why would someone genuinely fleeing torture and violence and mayhem seek to perpetrate exactly those things once they'd arrived in this country? It is baffling. And the problem is, I suspect these men were in a men-only hotel, and they are notoriously difficult to police. I've been told that by very senior policemen, that they really, really regard these as a powder keg situation. And they come here, and they come from a culture where, frankly, women are not respected, they are not prized, and they bring that culture with them. Now, I'm not saying their culture's wrong and our culture's right, but it is a very different culture, and they arrive here, and within weeks, they're behaving in exactly the same way as they behaved in the country they fled. And that is truly disgraceful. Now, can I just finish? Because I was so upset about this story. 2 of the women were raped, and a 3rd one filmed the whole rape, but was convicted of rape nevertheless because of the heinous nature of what he did. And the woman says herself that all she can see now in her nightmares is the face of the man who filmed it, laughing down at her. And then they leave her, and they go back to their hotel and light a barbecue.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just disgraceful.
It is totally disgraceful. And that's why I would go as far to say that not all cultures are equal. And there are some cultures that should not be allowed to thrive on UK shores. If you're coming from another country, if you want to, if you're a genuine asylum seeker, if you're genuinely seeking refuge, then you're absolutely right. You wouldn't go out committing these crimes anyway. You'd be absolutely thankful that a country has taken me in, that is looking after me when I had nowhere else to turn. You wouldn't be going out doing all of this kind of horrific stuff that we're talking about tonight. But I think, we have a problem in our country, and people will say that the raising of the flags, like today, like St George's flags, there'll be those on the left, in particular, in my view, that would say, no, these people are just using it as far-right projectionism, that these people just are little Englanders, they don't want anyone else in the country, don't care what colour you are, they just want it to be a white English society. I say that's completely wrong. I say the people that are putting up those flags today, celebrating St George, they're celebrating our entire history, our entire heritage, including, which I learned tonight, extends into the Muslim faith. But these are people that are putting up those flags that want to become more patriotic than ever, to make sure that we do not accept the culture of some of these men that we are seeing perpetrating these vile acts, because they believe that it's okay to do so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I trained as a journalist on the Western Mail in Cardiff, actually, and we celebrated St David's Day hugely every year, no problem. I went to a school, a Catholic school, half Irish kids, really, half English kids, and we had a big netball tournament, and we had the St George's flag and the Irish flag. And I could play netball for either team because my mother's Irish and my father was English. My mother is of Irish descent. And we don't make a big deal of it. We're just kind of proud of these things, and we put the flag up, and no one politicises it. I mean, we've got far more important things to be dealing with than arguing about flags. Put the flag up, celebrate St George's Day, and move on. That's what I think.
I think you're absolutely right, as ever, Linda. We're running out of time. Very quickly, Linda, have you been celebrating today? Have I asked you that already? Are you going to be celebrating?
Yeah, I've been a bit
You've got a cup
busy.
of tea. You've got a cup of tea, you told me earlier on.
I have got a cup of tea, and what I think is really British, I wouldn't have time to do it, but I will do it tomorrow, is I love fish and chips.
Ah, yes. Oh, there are nodding heads behind the glass. I can see everybody.
Yeah. On the beach. Fish and chips.
Fish and chips on the beach. Well,
yeah.
Well, there you are. You've had it here first. Linda, thank you so much for joining me again tonight. I hope you're well. Come back again soon. I'm sure you will. That's Linda Jubilee there, journalist and political commentator. After the break, we'll be talking to George Swenson, who is the chairman of Republican Overseas UK. We'll be getting all of his insights about Donald Trump, about what's going on in America and Iran. You're listening to the Evening Exchange. It's with me, Charlie Rowley. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, hello and welcome back to the Evening Exchange with me, Charlie Rowley, in for Peter Cardwell. We are at the home straights now of tonight's show, and it's been an absolute pleasure to be with you all again. And in this little last bit of the section that we've got of the show, you can get in touch. I want to hear from you. Drop me a call, 0344 499 1000. We'll get you on. I promise you we will. You can text the word talk to 87222. You can follow and message us on X at talkTV, or you can send a WhatsApp message or a short voice note. If you don't want to talk to us, you can send us a voice note. We love those. Again, same number, 0344 499 1000. But I'm absolutely delighted now to turn to all things America, and no one better to know what's going on, particularly within the Republican Party, particularly amongst President Trump's circles. I'm joined by the wonderful Greg Swenson. Hello, Greg.
Charlie, great to see you, and well done on your hosting the show this week.
Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah.
It's quite different to being that side of the desk, I can assure you, but I'm loving every minute of it, and I've got a brilliant team here to see me through. Are you in London, or are you beaming in?
I'm in Washington, actually. Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, well, good to see you. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Let's talk about President Trump. The latest news that we've had tonight, that he has issued a shoot and kill order in the Strait of Hormuz. So we know the traffic that's being mounted up there, or being avoided, because it's completely clear. You know, 1 minute we're hearing that Iran is controlling it and wanting to put tolls on it. Now we're hearing that Donald Trump is actually in control. And if anybody comes near that line of protection that he's put in, there'll be a shoot and kill policy. Is that not just going to escalate things? Tell us, Greg. Make it make sense. What's going on in Iran? And
yeah. I think it's really the tale of two different navies, two different military machines. I mean, it's really asymmetrical. It's really not a fair fight. It's completely unmatched. So yes, the regime or the IRGC is resorting to these small speedboats. So it's more of a pest. It's piracy. It's not really, you know, they don't have any military capabilities. So they're going to send these speedboats and try to create some havoc. I'm surprised that president even had to issue a shoot and kill order. I mean, you've seen what we've done to the speedboats in Venezuela, running drugs in and out of the U.S. from the Venezuela and other Latin American countries. So it's just a matter of, you know, paying attention and shooting them and destroying them. And I don't think it will take long for that to happen.
And these could be boats that are effectively dropping mines in the Strait of Hormuz. So even if after the conflict, even if after, you know, there's de-escalation, maybe a deal, we're not quite sure what's going on, the idea that those mines would actually still be there and could cause, you can just imagine the catastrophic damage that they would cause if a boat that's going through it, that's actually bringing produce into, whether it's the Middle East or it's making its way into Europe. You know, it would be dramatic scenes, to put it mildly, and we wouldn't know where those mines are. So of course, it seems perfectly logical to say to someone, look, if you are going to be dropping those mines, the US Navy is there to absolutely shoot you down and kill you to stop you from doing that.
Right. You know, there's the risk of mine dropping, and also the risk of them just attacking a ship, whether it's a commercial ship. I don't think that there's any chance they could get near a Navy vessel in or around the strait. But I do think it's a nuisance factor. And so the sooner we can eliminate these speedboats, the better. In the meantime, we're sweeping the strait for mines, and that will take some time. And that's just another reason to point out that this regime had to be stopped. And I think that the fact that, you know, they've been laying mines there for years. So it's always been a risk, but I think it's elevated now, of course. So the minesweepers are working. You know, we've got drones, we've got traditional minesweepers, we've got underwater, you know, Navy SEAL types. I mean, this is going to be, you know, a process, but it's one that, you know, again, it's a completely overmatched situation now.
And what do you think happens next? Because my understanding, but there's always breaking news in this day and age, that, you know, the ceasefire has been extended. Is that still the case?
It still is the case, although I suspect that the regime will continue to try to buy time, and they're not really serious about negotiating, whether it's the regime or the IRGC or some combination of both. There's definitely internal conflict within the power struggle in Iran, and they're not serious. And I think they've always negotiated and then cheated. And so I'm not really confident in this deal. I might be wrong on that. You know, I'm not really putting a wager down, but I think ultimately the United States is just going to have to eliminate what's left of the regime and eliminate these speedboats and hopefully have some kind of regime change.
You can't possibly be wrong, Greg, because nobody really seems to know what's going on by the day, and we never know because we know how Donald Trump operates. We know he's a businessman. We know he likes to make a deal. We know he likes to throw things out there to unsettle us, to wrongfoot us, to make him more elevated and in control of events. That hasn't quite happened, it seems to me, on this particular issue, because war is far much more complicated than trying to get a business deal. But you talked about eliminating the Iranian Navy, what's left of it. I mean, it should be obliterated.
Yeah, it's not much.
It's not much. But someone else that has been removed, taken down in a metaphorical sense, is the US Secretary of the Navy. Pete Hegseth, the Defense Secretary, has sacked John Phelan, who was ousted from his military role only yesterday afternoon. What's happening there? Do we?
Yeah, we do. I mean, the talk inside the Beltway in the last day has been that, this was just a standard operating procedure where, the secretary was not on the same page as Secretary Hegseth, and also was going around him trying to go directly to the president. He actually went to the White House after he was fired. And the president just said, sorry, you're fired. That's it. It's not the first time he's used that term. But I do think that, this is not unusual in administrations where, the entrenched bureaucracy is not on the same page as the new political appointees. Pete Hegseth is really aggressive. He's really changed the culture there. The rank and file soldiers and airmen and sailors really like Pete Hegseth. Recruiting is at, Charlie, it's interesting. Recruiting during the Biden years was at an all-time low. We've had 50 years of a professional service where there's no peacetime draft. In the 50 years, Biden hit an all-time low. Pete Hegseth, in just a year and a half, has gotten the recruiting back to an all-time high, with the exception of post 9/11, when there was a lot of enthusiasm for the service. So, the military is doing great, obviously, and you could see that in the last few missions that they've attempted and completed, as well as the recruiting, which is really important. So, he's a different type of secretary, that's for sure, Secretary of War, or formerly known as Secretary of Defense. And that's not going to sit well with some of the traditional bureaucrats in the Army, in the rank and file, but also especially in the leadership ranks. So he's gotten rid of DEI. He's gotten rid of any sort of focus on climate change or all this nonsense that we saw during the Biden years. He's really taken an axe to that and gotten back to lethality, which is what the purpose of the military is.
But let's get to the heart of it, Greg. I mean, nobody thought that we would be in the position that we're currently in now, where America, the United States of America, that had gone in to do what I think is the right thing to do. I know many people would disagree with that, because this is an Iranian regime, a tyrannical regime that has funded so many of its proxies, the Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas, all people that want to destroy our way of life, all people that want to attack us on our home soil. They've been at it for years. They've turned their guns on their own people. They should not be allowed to continue in the way in which they do. And I'm just sorry, I must say, that our government, and it's from me to you personally, that we were not more helpful or forthcoming in allowing the US to use our air bases to get your jets into Iran to do the work that I think was the right thing to do. However, nobody envisaged, and nobody would have wanted or foresaw where we are now, which is now the president negotiating with Iran. They are on equal terms. I thought the whole point was to obliterate them, get them out, get someone in, like in Venezuela, who can be managed or worked with, however you want to put it, and the situation comes to a very, very quick close. That's not happened in this case, has it?
Well, I think there's the nuisance factor, which is that this regime are a bunch of lunatics, right? They're suicidal in many ways, and so anyone else in the world would have folded already. They're not afraid of the nuclear deterrent because they're apocalyptic. They're suicidal. So the normal negotiating, which typically has been nuclear deterrent or any sort of powerful military deterrent, isn't really working. So we might come to a deal and maybe they'll behave better, or maybe not. But either way, it's going to work because, again, the overwhelming military victory that we've accomplished already is something that, they can't really turn the clock back. There's no way they're coming back from this, in spite of the funny rhetoric that comes out of these guys in Tehran. And so, whether it's done through negotiating, and by the way, we are negotiating from a completely powerful position. The president's not going to roll over for any of the demands. He's surely not going to allow any development of nuclear weapons. He's not going to allow the regime to continue funding the proxies. The proxies are sort of down and out. And then, of course, they have basically eliminated their, for the most part, their ballistic missile program. So, there's not much left, but I think if these people continue to be suicidal and try to extend this thing or even escalate it, that's just not going to work. So look, there's some unknowns here. There always are. And I think they've game theoried all potential, outcomes here. And so there really aren't any major surprises. And yeah, we do have this nuisance in the strait that we have to deal with. But remember, Charlie, the American Navy has been providing safe passage for commercial ships throughout the world for 80 years now. So, this is not new. It's just that we've had to turn it up a notch. That's for sure. An understatement, but it's not new. I mean, we've always provided safe passage for the world, and we'll continue to do that.
No, well, you're absolutely right on that. And you mentioned, just how it could be that Iran behave. I mean, President Trump's had some choice words, I should say, not just for the Iranians, but for fellow politicians, including Sir Keir Starmer, where he has told the BBC that Starmer could only recover, I guess politically and back home in the UK, politically, if he changed course on immigration and opened the North Sea. If he doesn't, I don't think he has a chance. So that's President Trump's view on Keir Starmer. Doesn't bode well just ahead of the King's visit, does it?
No, it's odd timing, but I think the King will do. I think he'll do a great job of kind of smoothing out the rough edges, maybe. But the president is he's honest, he's candid, and by the way, we all agree with him. We meaning you and me and everybody else on our side of the aisle, political aisle, and so. The fact that the UK continues to buy oil from the Norwegians who are drilling the oil in the North Sea is just so crazy. And so, it's self-destructive. And, remember, as 20 years ago, the UK was a net exporter of energy and completely energy independent. The Americans, we've gone both ways on that. It was only a few years ago where we were, consumed with this climate nonsense as well. And we were the swing price in energy markets during Trump's first term. We were the world's leading energy producer. We backed away from that in the Biden years. So I'm not saying this from some, for like in any sense of snobbery, and wagging my finger, the UK should do this and that. We've been through it. We made the same mistakes. And I think you can look at what the Trump administration is doing, especially in the energy sector, and really take a page out of it. I think that would be great for this great country, the United Kingdom.
Greg, talking a lot of sense there. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. That's Greg Swenson there from the Republicans Overseas. We're going to take a short break now, and after the break we will be taking your calls. I absolutely promise you, we've got them lined up, so stay tuned for that. This is Charlie Rowley, this is the Evening Exchange, this is Talk.
handover briefing I was getting as I arrived at post was what I felt was a generally dismissive attitude to his vetting clearance. The focus was on getting Mandelson out to Washington quickly. Despite this atmosphere, an atmosphere of pressure, the department completed developed vetting to the normal high standard. Because the vetting process is not there to determine fitness for office or reputational risk, it's there to protect national security.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much for joining me this evening here on Talk. It is the Evening Exchange with me, Charlie Rowley, and it's been a fantastic 3 hours coming up to the end now, and I've had a brilliant team leading us through all throughout the night, so thank you to them, and they can't wait to get off and enjoy what is left of St George's Day. For the last few minutes, we're going to take some of your calls. I think we've got Georgina on the line. Hello, Georgina.
Good evening, Charlie, and happy St George's Day to you. I don't think Keir Starmer's just been asked to resign by Kemi Badenoch. Labour peers are asking for his resignation, and his own cabinet have lost confidence in his leadership. But even now, I mean, the man's dead in the water. And this Prime Minister of ours doesn't underestimate the power of denial. He's still lying to his teeth and sticking to his ridiculous story regarding not knowing that Mandelson failed the vetting process. And he's pointing his fingers at everybody else to take the blame. And the blame, Charlie, is his alone. He'd throw his own grandmother under the bus to stay in number 10.
Just on the point about Starmer and the way in which he's handled the Scot, would you not give him a bit of credit if he just came out and said, you know what, I knew he was a wrong un. I know he had all the baggage of the past, but I appointed him because he actually was part of a successful Labour government. He was the architect of winning 3 successful general elections, and I thought he'd be better on my team despite his checkered record. Would that appease you in any way? Would that persuade you? Would you say, oh, well, I can kind of see what he was trying to do there? Or would you think, no, he should never have appointed Peter Mandelson in the first place?
Well, that would never have persuaded me to vote Labour in a month of Sundays, but I would have respected the man more.
That's what I mean. It would have persuaded you of his argument more than voting for Labour.
Yeah, if he'd have been honest and said, look, I'll hold my hands up, I've made a catastrophic mistake here, and I really do need you to accept my sincere apology, but I don't think the man could be sincere if his life depended on it. And I don't think he could tell the truth if his life depended on it. I mean, the truth is, Charlie, that Mandelson was getting this job regardless of the vetting process. He was already in position. So this show in Westminster now is just that. It's a show. So Starmer can plead ignorance and plausible deniability all he wants, because it's his ignorance and his utter contempt for governmental rules that will finally push him out to number 10.
You're absolutely right, Georgina. And the only show I think people should be watching is this one here. Thanks so much for your call, Georgina. We'll go to Karen now in Bournemouth. Hello, Karen.
Hi, Charlie.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks, yeah.
What would you like to say?
Well, being as Starmer wrote such a nice message for us on St George's Day, I thought I'd write him a nice message back.
Oh, yes.
Dear Mr Starmer, take your fat, farting backside, your bloated belly, and your foul, odious, oafish mouth, and move to the EU, China or Russia, with your hateful humour and pathetic, parasitic pals. Take the treacherous, traitorous treason that drips from your lousy, lying lips and crawl back under the sleazy, slimy rock you came from. You don't like England, and true Britons don't want you. Begone, you pox-ridden peasant.
Karen in Bournemouth. There we are. Applause rings round the office. Thank you so much for that. I would say that was almost Shakespearean, and it is National Shakespeare Day.
Well, I thought I'd better put the Shakespearean bit in there somewhere, as it's Shakespeare Day as well.
Amazing stuff, Karen. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening. That was brilliant. I don't know what you do, Karen, but I think you could take up poetry. You could make quite a lucrative career in that. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And a final voice note, who we have from Mariana. Let's hear it.
Good evening, Anna. Sorry. I'd like you to play this to your guest. I think his name may be Matt. I am sick to death of men sitting there telling the rest of the country, the female side of the country, the original ones, by the way, how and why we should feel sorry and accommodate these illegals crossing into our country. Listen to me, fella. I look Scandinavian. I'm very blonde, very blue-eyed, and I am the one in danger. I am the one being preyed upon by these monsters. Let me tell you how you stop them coming. The minute their sandal steps foot in our country, on our soil, at gunpoint, they are taken and they are put behind razor wire. You sit there in your suit and tie and your nice, calm voice saying how we make it easier, we know they're illegal. But I don't need a passport. I don't need a film. Stand me on any street, I'll point them out to you. Oh, you make me so angry.
Marianne, strong stuff there, which I think a lot of people would agree with. Strong views all throughout the night. I've had some brilliant guests, including, can't get over Karen's poem there. But if there was any bit of Shakespeare, I would say to the Prime Minister, not beware the Ides of March, beware those backbenchers in May. There we go. It took me 3 hours to come up with that. But someone more quick-witted and far more intelligent than me sitting...
Is not available, so sadly.
I don't know who I was cutting to, but it wasn't your name. But Phil Dave joins me in the studio. Hello, Phil.
Hi, Charlie Rowley. Well, this is an unexpected treat on many different fronts. I made such a fuss at 1 o'clock this morning saying I have no idea when I'll be back on Talk, but